I am advised that we have the required quorum and we can proceed with the meeting. It is my pleasure to welcome you to this regular meeting of the Inter-American Council for Integral Development. Today, we gather to discuss the important theme of air connectivity to unlock economic growth. As outlined in the concept note distributed by the Secretariat, air connectivity is not just a mode of transportation. It drives regional trade, investment, and integration across the Americas, from the vast landscapes of Canada to the southernmost reaches of Argentina and across the vibrant Caribbean islands. Air transport serves as the crucial link that binds our economies, fosters tourism, and strengthens our regional cooperation. By expanding and optimizing this vital infrastructure, we can unlock the immense economic potential of the region, creating new opportunities for growth, connectivity, and employment that will uplift communities across the hemisphere. To help us navigate this critical issue of air connectivity and the opportunities it presents for unlocking economic growth, we are honored to be joined by the Honorable Alva Baptiste, Minister of External Affairs, International Trade, Civil Aviation and Diaspora Affairs of St. Lucia, and His Excellency Luis Almagro, Secretary General of the Organization of American States, together with a distinguished panel of experts. Our guest panelists today include Mr. Juan Carlos Salazar, Secretary General, International Civil Aviation, Mr. Rodolfo Sabonge, Secretary General, Association of Caribbean States, Mr. Peter Cerda, Regional Vice President, the Americas International Air Transportation Association, and Ms. Maria Luisa Navarro, Senior Director for Government Relations of Copa Airlines. The presence of Honorable Minister Baptiste, Secretary General Almagro, and our distinguished panelists underscores the significance of today's discussions and the relevance of this theme to the region's future. We look forward to your invaluable perspectives from key sectors, aviation, regional organizations, and industry that are essential to advancing air connectivity and promoting economic integration. I now submit for your consideration, for the consideration of this council, the draft order of business document CD/OD-149/24. If there are no objections, the draft order of business is approved. Approved. It is my distinct honor to now give the floor to Minister Baptiste. Minister, your leadership and unwavering commitment to regional cooperation and integration serve as an inspiration to all of us, motivating our daily efforts to advance the well-being of our countries and the region as a whole. Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, for granting me leave to address this August Assembly. But before I get down to business, Chair, please permit me to acknowledge the Secretary General of our great organization, Luis Almagro, the Regional Vice President for the Americas of the International Air Transport Association, Peter Cerda, Executive Secretary at the Executive Secretariat for Integral Development, permanent representatives, alternate representatives, panelists, other distinguished personalities of this August Assembly, ladies and gentlemen. It is a privilege and distinct honor to be invited at this regular meeting of CIDI, the highest organ of the OAS, which is mandated to promote inclusive and equitable socioeconomic development in the hemisphere, as the keynote speaker on the very important topic of air connectivity to unlock economic growth. The importance of air connectivity in spurring economic growth and development forms part of the broader theme on physical connectivity to promote regional trade and integration for economic growth. It must therefore be viewed within the context of one of the important interventions aimed at promoting regional trade and integration for economic growth, which aligns with the mandate of CIDI. This broader theme on physical connectivity to promote regional trade and integration for economic growth follows on from the previous theme of connectivity and technology for resilient socioeconomic development. Our countries need to improve the physical connectivity to enable us to achieve resilient socioeconomic development. It is well established that the array of interventions required for us to address physical connectivity include addressing international regulatory obstacles for trade facilitation, promoting tourism from multi-destination travel, air connectivity to unlock economic growth, modernizing ports, connecting cities and regions in the Americas to bolster substantial competitiveness and alleviating transportation and logistics barriers. This is the context in which we need to understand how air connectivity to unlock economic growth will contribute to promoting regional integration and trade for economic growth, and ultimately promoting inclusive growth and equitable development across the hemisphere. I will set in motion my address this morning by clearly defining what we mean by air connectivity, because we need a ready compass in which to set our course. The International Civil Aviation Organization defines it as an indicator of a network's concentration and its ability to move passengers from the origin to the destination seamlessly. I would also like to say that there are numerous measures of air connectivity. Unsurprisingly, it is well documented that air connectivity provides the foundation for the international mobility of people, goods, capital, and services, and is therefore a vital engine of economic growth worldwide, and in particular for our hemisphere. The empirical data has established the substantial economic benefits that accrue from air connectivity. Further, as highlighted in the report, the economic benefits of reducing aviation taxes in Latin America and the Caribbean, prepared by CEO Amsterdam Economics in 2015, that the relationship between connectivity growth and economic growth is a two-way or symbiotic relationship, in that air travel contributes to economic growth through many channels, and economic growth in turn stimulates the demand for air travel. There is therefore a virtuous circle between connectivity growth and economic growth. The channels through which air connectivity impact economic growth can be felt on a multiplicity of levels. Consequently, the economic impact of air connectivity is well established in aviation and air transport literature. However, to highlight the importance of air connectivity to regional trade and integration to economic prosperity, I wish to review the current economic performance pertaining to air connectivity. Based on a study undertaken by ATAG in 2014, the number of jobs directly related to aviation in Latin America and the Caribbean is 840,000 jobs. These are jobs directly related to the operation and maintenance of the functioning of the airports, including the airlines, ATC, ground handlers, security, maintenance, immigration, and customs. More significantly, the number of indirect jobs that is created by the facilitation of business of other sectors of the economy due to aviation amounts to over 4 million jobs. Moreover, $153 billion of gross domestic product is generated by the aviation sector. The benefits accruing from the aviation sector is therefore substantial, more so for the Caribbean member states of the OECS, in which tourism plays a major role in their economies. Estimates from the World Tourism and Travel Council show that the total contribution of travel and tourism to Caribbean GDP, including wider effects from investment, the supply chain and induced income impacts, was $57.1 billion in 2017 and significantly accounted for 15.2% of GDP. This figure was forecast to rise by 3.6% per annum to US $84 billion by 2028. Moreover, the World Travel and Tourism Council estimated that travel and tourism generated approximately 758,000 jobs. It should be noted that these average figures mask significant disparities among the Caribbean countries, which are more dependent upon tourism, including Antigua and Barbuda, Barbados, and St. Lucia. In the case of St. Lucia, my country, the World Travel and Tourism Council conducted an economic impact study in 2015 and showed that the total contribution of travel and tourism to major macroeconomic variables were as follows: 39.5% of GDP, 44.1% of total employment, and 59.2% of exports, and 20.5% of total investment. While these figures show the importance of air connectivity to our economies, it is to be noted that the region still lacks sufficient air connectivity to support regional integration and trade for economic growth. In its report, Air Connectivity Measuring the Connections That Drive Economic Growth, IATA shows by region Latin America and the Caribbean's air connectivity relative to population size and growth rates was the second lowest at 21%, with Africa being the lowest at 15%. The report further states that in terms of air connectivity, the Latin American and Caribbean region have grown with the lowest rates over the 5-year period from 2014 to 2019, compared to the other regions. It further highlights that to reach its air connectivity growth potential, the region needs to overcome substantial barriers as it relates to intra-regional travel, which is critical to regional trade and integration. Significant progress has been made, particularly in Central America, where 37% of incoming travel is intra-regional, the highest of any sub-region globally. Intra-regional travel in the Caribbean and South America was only 9% and 11% respectively, indicating that there is considerable potential for further growth if air connectivity within these regions is improved. In the case of the Caribbean, IATA has shown a decline for all regional countries except 6 over the period 2008-2018, in contrast to the marked increase in global connectivity for most Caribbean countries. And at this juncture, I pause to reflect on a question that most persons ask. During the days of bananas, before our region embraced tourism as an engine for economic growth, we had more intra-regional connectivity. And that question stares us in the face, for which we need an adequate response. When we concentrated mainly on agriculture, we had some hubbing operations within the Caribbean. So Vincentians used St. Lucia as a hub, they used Barbados as a hub, and others, including going to Dominica. But today, because tourists and other passengers like to move from point to point, those countries have developed the airports, so there is more direct flights from North America to Dominica, direct flights to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And therefore, it obviated the necessity of having hubs within the Caribbean to take care of it. And this is one of the issues that we must confront. There is a change pattern of air traffic into our region and, of course, the wider hemisphere. During the remainder of my presentation, I will attempt to identify major factors in impeding air connectivity and, of course, recommend some solutions. I know time and strict relevancy will not permit me to dissect the anatomy of all the issues, but one of them, which normally is advanced, is that of high taxes in our region. And you have many studies that have actually criticized Caribbean governments for those high taxes and impeding regional travel. But the SEO Amsterdam Economic Report I referred to earlier states as follows. Despite its economic value, many governments in the region view air transport as a luxury for the wealthy rather than a catalyst for economic growth. As a result, aviation is an easy target for taxation. Such taxes are not intended to cover the cost of the use of aviation system infrastructure and services, but solely to generate general government income. Governments in the region generally do not consider that taxation leads to discourage travel, which limits connectivity, unquote. In the CIDI report I referred to earlier, it stated that one possible explanation for the relative lack of intra-regional connectivity is the price of air travel as a result of the size and nature of our region. The intra-regional air market is relatively small and fragmented. Again, I find it fitting to pause and accentuate the fact that there is absolutely no other region in the world where islands are so close together. And therefore, it impacts the overall operation in the Caribbean. By way of example, in Canada, if you have a brand new Dash 8 or ATR 72 or 42 flying from point A to point B, it will take about 3 hours, 3.5 hours. But in the Caribbean, you have an aircraft at George Charles going to Barbados. It takes off, and in about half an hour in Barbados. 20 minutes on the ground, it goes to St. Vincent, another 30 minutes, 20 minutes turnaround, goes to Grenada, and then goes to Trinidad. But whilst all of those cycles are being done, the aircraft in Canada is yet to make one cycle. And after 10,000 cycles, the aircraft goes into maintenance. So aeroplanes in the Caribbean goes into maintenance more often than those in other regions. And that impacts the operation in the Caribbean. Even investments in airports. Because most of the time we have traffic from the UK and North America arriving in the afternoon, you find congestion at the airport for about maybe 4 to 6 hours. And for the rest of the day, the airport is basically available for horse racing, for anything, because it's practically empty. But we insist on expanding for peak periods. So we invest in airport for millions of dollars. So we expand to take care of traffic increase for the next 30 or 50 years. But there is no great profitability at the present moment. So what we are essentially doing is to expand the airport infrastructure. The additional space has to be lighted, cool, clean, etc. So you increase your operating costs without the corresponding increase in passenger and traffic movement. So this in itself is a great deterrent for governments of our region to decide to remove taxes, because after 911 in particular, we had a separate annex for security, and we had to put in additional equipment at the airports. And therefore, governments within our region would be reluctant to divest themselves of that revenue stream because of the fundamental realities surrounding Caribbean economies. We have suffered erosion of trade preferences, decline in official development assistance. The climate crisis continues its decimating march across the environmental, moral, and economic fabric of our countries. We are always prone to external shocks, and of course, the greatest threat, which is climate change, to all of us, and it's a major concern, and most of us can identify with it. So there is serious curtailment of public sector income, and the uncertainties that exist in the world with external shocks would increase the gravity of their fear. But in that context, we need to boldly address the whole issue of taxation. But governments would require a carefully crafted response to the many studies that have suggested we should remove the taxes and in other cases reduce the taxes. So we need to subject it to new levels of critical examination to look at the net benefit to the respective economies. So just like we make provisions for education and healthcare, we should make provisions for the net benefit to the economy when we decide to engage airlines. By way of example, you have low-cost carriers that sometimes the landing fees are being paid by the airport authorities. And you say, but why would an airport authority want to pay the landing fees and attract low-cost carriers? By way of an economic response is that they bring passengers to the airport. They go to the restaurants at the airport. They go to hotels around the area. And so there is a net benefit. And we need to evolve to that level, but we require a study that will emerge with substantial and concrete recommendations that could instigate that type of response from regional governments. Another issue that I wish to address before I close is that we need to conduct route analysis to try to determine the demand for air travel on certain routes. For example, currently, if I have to go to Central America and South America, I must go through Miami. Invariably, take American Airlines, go to Miami, Miami, Mexico, Miami, Suriname, Miami, to different places around. And so people do travel from Latin America to the Caribbean, from the Caribbean to Latin America. So we need to conduct that route analysis to determine how we can now redesign the hub and spoke operation to facilitate travel within the region. We have Guyana and Suriname that are members of CARICOM in the south of Trinidad, in the South American region. So we may be able to facilitate a connection for the rest of the South American region via Suriname or Guyana and connect them with the wider Caribbean. So we can develop a hub and spoke operation at Iwanora International Airport that the British Airways would fly directly to Guyana and back so passengers can move. But we need to study the flow and the level of demand on those routes to be able to meaningfully decide how we engage with that very troublesome issue. Like I indicated, time is certainly not on our side. I will make available a more elaborate presentation. I will make it available so that it could be circulated in terms of how I believe we should respond to the current challenges. But as I prepare to close, I want to really impress upon the region that immediately after this meeting, at some point, the OAS must decide to conduct the necessary research, maybe have a working committee to try to make a determination as to how best to address this pressing challenge. Because we cannot do without air connectivity in this region. It restricts trade, it makes travel very expensive, and short-haul travel is always more expensive than long-haul travel. Because long-haul travel entails bigger aeroplanes that hold more passengers and can spread the cost of travel on more heads in the cabin. They fly through for longer periods, 8 hours, for example, from St. Lucia to the UK. And any long-haul carrier has a lower unit cost than short-haul traffic. And part of the reason why in the Caribbean we are confronted with that situation is because the size of the aeroplane that may match a particular route cannot be used because of passenger comfort. So before LIAT utilized a Twin Otter, which is a 19-seater with limited capacity to hold luggage. So if we are going to engage in hub and spoke, somebody comes from Virgin Atlantic with 2 pieces each, a family of 5. How all that baggage would find its way on that Twin Otter, and we are talking about 19 passengers, even in terms of the cabin, for comfort of the traveling public. And that's why LIAT had to move from Twin Otters to the Dash 8 at one time, and of course, in more recent times, moved to the ATR and 72. So I hope that I did give you an adumbrate of the challenges that we face and the importance of air connectivity and the urgent need for us to address it with lightning rapidity. I thank you for listening.
Thank you, Minister Baptiste, for your insightful remarks. Your perspectives provide an excellent foundation for today's discussion. It is now my distinct honor to invite His Excellency Luis Almagro, Secretary General of the Organization of American States, to deliver the opening remarks. Secretary General, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Great. Minister Alba Baptiste, great to see you here. Thank you. And it's a great pleasure for us that you join us today for this meeting of the Inter-American Council for Integral Development on the critical theme of air connectivity to unlock economic growth. Today, we gather to explore how enhancing air connectivity can serve as a catalyst for regional integration, trade, and economic growth, and unleash opportunities for our people. Our region spans over 16.4 square miles, filled with vast natural wealth and diverse cultures. Yet, we need to continue to be plagued by the daunting statistic of being the most unequal region in the world. It is unacceptable that in countries so rich in resources, there are still extraordinary levels of poverty and inequality, with over 50% of the population living below the poverty line in many of our countries. We must address this imbalance. Our region potential is vast, and it is time to harness it fully to deliver for our people. Air connectivity is a key ingredient of this transformative agenda. It is more than just moving people from one place to another. It is about connecting markets, fostering trade and investment, promoting tourism, and creating opportunities for innovation and collaboration. The aviation sector is already a powerful economic driver in our region, connecting 385 cities, 102.6 million flights, and supporting nearly 5 million jobs. Yet, the sector remains underfunded by both the public and private sectors. Clarks estimate that with the right investments and strategic reforms in air connectivity, we could unlock over 42 billion in additional GDP and create nearly 1 million new jobs. This meeting provides a space for identifying strategic solutions that will strengthen our air connectivity and better integrate our economies. As we consider practical steps forward, such as simplifying regulatory frameworks and fostering private sector investment, we must recognize the opportunity for engagement between and among sectors. countries and sub-regions. The OES provides a real ready platform for this hemispheric engagement, an engagement which deepens trade, increases cooperation, and attracts greater investment to our economies. We need new tools and instruments, more effective and efficient, to truly mark our region's entry into the 21st century. By improving air connectivity, we not only make travel more viable and affordable, but also our region to become a hub for technological innovation and commerce, offering our people better prospects for their livelihoods and well-being. Promoting air connectivity to unlock economic growth must go hand in hand with ensuring that our development path remains sustainable and inclusive. Our commitment to reducing greenhouse gas emissions and bolstering climate action must remain central to this dialogue. And colleagues, I end where I began. There is no reason why countries with such wealth and resources cannot manage these assets efficiently to deliver real benefits to their people. Let us commit to working together to create the conditions for our region to flourish. Our commitment must move beyond words into concrete action. We are the OES stands ready to support these efforts, providing platform for dialogue, the sharing experiences, cooperation, and action. I look forward for today's discussions and to the concrete steps we can take together to enhance air connectivity. Minister Baptiste, I know this is an issue which is close to your heart, and I expect that you will steer us towards a safe landing as we navigate our path forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Secretary General Almagro, for taking the time to join us today. Your leadership continues to underscore the importance of addressing the key challenges and opportunities facing our region. We are grateful for your guidance as we consider the critical issues on our agenda, and we appreciate the emphasis you place on fostering collaboration, sustainability, and inclusion in all of our efforts. Once again, thank you for setting the tone for our discussions and for your unwavering support in advancing the priorities of the OAS and its member states. Thank you. We are now joined by a panel of experts who will share their knowledge and experience on today's theme. Each panelist will have 7 minutes for their presentation, after which we will open the floor for questions and dialogue. Our first panelist is the Secretary General of the International Civil Aviation, ICAO, Mr. Juan Carlos Salazar, who will be joining us virtually today. Secretary General, it is an honor to have you with us. Your leadership in advancing ICAO's mission as the global forum for international civil aviation and fostering aviation capacity is invaluable, and we look forward to your contributions to this discussion. Secretary General Salazar, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, Honorable Minister Baptiste, Secretary General Almagro, Executive Secretary General Osborne, and fellow panelists, distinguished members, state representatives. I would like to begin by commending Ambassador Darius Clark for bringing us together to address air connectivity to unlock economic growth. Maximizing the aviation's role in sustainable development is a critical priority that requires concerted action from all of us. And I would like here to also recognize the very compelling call that the Honorable Minister Baptiste had made to enhance air connectivity and to the important contribution made by air connectivity to the development of states. The International Civil Aviation Organization is the specialized agency of the United Nations and actively supports the Organization of American States mission to drive economic and social progress through the Americas recognizing aviation's crucial role. For those less familiar with the organization, ICAO was established by the Chicago Convention in the year 1944. We facilitate international cooperation on aviation safety, security, and sustainability by adopting a set of standards that are applicable to our 194 member states. We also assist our member states with implementation through auditing and capacity building programs. This year, as ICAO celebrates its 80th anniversary, we are introducing a new vision for global air transport along with our first long-term strategic plan, which looks ahead to the year 2050. In this plan, we envision a safe, secure, and sustainable international civil aviation system that connects the world, benefiting all nations and all people. And this vision is supported by three key aspirations. The aspiration of zero fatalities in international aviation from accidents and acts of unlawful interference. The aspiration of net zero carbon emissions by the year 2050 for international aviation operations. And the aspiration of an aviation sector serving as an integral part of a thriving, connected, accessible, inclusive, and affordable transport system where no country is left behind. These aspirations are ambitious, but also essential. They drive us to push boundaries as we work towards a safer, cleaner, and more accessible global aviation network. These meetings focus on enhancing connectivity for economic and social development aligns perfectly with ICAO's new vision, particularly our commitment to environmental objectives and enhancing air connectivity. Reducing distances and flight times between city pairs through new direct services will decrease fuel burn and carbon emissions. This operational improvement, along with important new aircraft and engine technologies, sustainable aviation fuels, and more efficient air navigation procedures, will all contribute to our ambitious goal of achieving net zero carbon emissions by the year 2050. And ICAO is moving forward on enhancing air connectivity. We help the states develop the necessary legal and regulatory frameworks and how regulators can assure the safe, secure, and the seamless and sustainable movement of aircraft, passenger, and cargo. We help states design and support regulatory bodies that can incorporate and provide adequate oversight. We also assist the states in maintaining and improving the physical and digital infrastructure that is critical to this objective. Finally, liberalization is key to improving aviation connectivity. I wish to take this opportunity to commend many of the Organization of American member states for their notable efforts in the direction of liberalizing market access. These efforts are evident in several key agreements. Recently, in April last year, an important breakthrough was achieved at a meeting in Santiago, Chile. There, the South American civil aviation directors, along with representatives from the United States, Europe, and industry associations, convened to identify a strategic course for sustainable growth and development. The outcome of this meeting presents a comprehensive approach to addressing the industry challenges while seizing the opportunities ahead. This approach commits to transforming South American civil aviation through progress on 6 priorities: the competitiveness, the environmental sustainability, human resources, effective planning, civil aviation authorities governance, and innovation. This Santiago Declaration builds upon efforts initiated in the year 2018 by ICAO Global Aviation Forum that took place in Fortaleza in Brazil, which produced the declaration to promote connectivity through the development of sustainability of air transport in the Pan American region, a vision for 2020-2025. Moreover, in 2010, the states signed the multilateral Open Skies Agreement for the Latin American Civil Aviation Commission member states, which entered into force in the year 2019. But to unlock the full potential of these promising agreements, comprehensive implementation is crucial. The Americas are brimming with potential for aviation growth. The region's geography, with its challenging terrain for surface transportation, lower population density, and many island states, naturally favor air travel as a primary mode of connectivity. And this is why aviation emerged as a critical connectivity mode in the Americas. These factors won't change, meaning that we must increase investments in aviation infrastructure and in innovation while deepening our collaboration. Harnessing our collective expertise and resources will accelerate the realization of an efficient, sustainable, inclusive, and accessible Pan-American aviation ecosystem. The benefits will extend far beyond the civil aviation sector, touching every aspect of the economy and society, as the Honorable mentioned before my intervention. Well-connected airports and excellent air services networks make countries more attractive to multinational corporations, leading further in direct investment, job creation, economic growth, and technological transfer. Airlines will play a particularly crucial role through strategic network planning, innovative route development, partnerships, and emerging business models. Their impact is enhanced in liberalized operating environments where competition, innovation, and improved service qualities are encouraged. However, airlines alone cannot achieve the goal of safe, secure, and sustainable and seamless air connectivity throughout the Americas. This ambitious goal requires concerted action from all stakeholders, and in particular from the civil aviation authorities and the member states. ICAO is eager to elevate our partnership with the Organization of American States and with the member states and all stakeholders present today. We envision expanding our collaboration through targeted initiatives and shared expertise tailored to the unique needs of the Americas. I encourage you to actively engage with ICAO and with our global network of partners to identify specific areas where we can amplify your aviation development goals. In particular, ICAO has its regional offices based in Mexico City and Lima that are covering all the states in the region. Together, we have the opportunity to build an aviation system in the Americas that not only meets the region's distinct challenges, but also sets a new global standard for connectivity, sustainability, and innovation. I thank you very much, and I look forward to the intervention of my panelists.
Thank you, Secretary General Salazar, for your insightful remarks. Your perspectives provide a strong foundation for today's dialogue, and we look forward to exploring opportunities for ICAO and the OAS to collaborate in advancing regional cooperation and strengthening air connectivity across the Americas. Our next scheduled panelist, Mr. Rodolfo Sabonge, Secretary General of the Association of Caribbean States, is unable to be with us today and has expressed his regrets. In his stead, Ms. Safia Reed will provide the perspective on the current challenges and opportunities in air connectivity in the Caribbean. I now give the floor to Ms. Safia Reed.
Good morning. It is a privilege to represent Secretary General of the Association of Caribbean States, His Excellency Rodolfo Sabonge, who regrettably could not be here due to unforeseen circumstances. He conveys his sincerest apologies and highest regards to Ambassador Luis Almagro, Secretary General of the OAS, Honorable Minister Alva Batiste, Ambassador Elizabeth Darius Clark, Chair of the CIDI, Ms. Kim Osborne, Executive Secretary for Integral Development, and to all esteemed panelists and delegates at this meeting. It is a great honor to convey these remarks on his behalf on a topic that is very crucial to the future of our region, air transport connectivity. Today's discussion aligns closely with the Association of Caribbean States' long-standing priorities in this regard, and I'm eager to explore how we can continue to collaborate effectively with the Organization of American States and other regional partners to achieve these shared goals. The importance of air transport to the sustainable development of the Greater Caribbean is a foregone conclusion. The Greater Caribbean, defined as a geographic area and countries surrounding the Caribbean Sea, represents a significant market in this hemisphere. It is indeed a lifeline for economies, supporting tourism, global business, and the rapid movement of perishable goods. By strengthening our air connectivity, we create opportunities for foreign investment, cultural exchange, and sustainable economic growth. In today's fast-paced world, there's also an increased expectation from businesses and consumers for greater supply chain responsiveness and transparency, and air transport provides the speed needed to improve distribution networks. Here in the Greater Caribbean, with communities spread across the Caribbean Sea and Latin America, air travel serves to deepen relationships, enhance trade and tourism, and create a more enduring regional connection overall. It provides the agility needed to meet consumer and business expectations across our region. However, despite these opportunities, we must acknowledge the significant limitations that continue to undermine our progress. The challenges are numerous: limited economies of scale, high transport costs, inconsistent schedules, infrastructural deficits, and the lack of regional transport services. Moreover, taxes on short-haul air travel in the Caribbean are among the highest globally, further discouraging intra-regional traffic. The COVID-19 pandemic only exacerbated these issues, disrupting supply chains and severely impacting air and maritime transport across the region. Even now, the level of direct air connectivity varies significantly by destination and country. For instance, in the Dominican Republic and Jamaica, we see stronger air connections at hubs like Punta Cana and Montego Bay. And with larger countries such as Panama, Puerto Rico, and Cuba, they also enjoy more extensive air routes compared to small island states. Most Caribbean airports offer direct flights to approximately 7 to 30 destinations, and many of these are extra-regional, limiting intra-Caribbean connectivity. This is especially true for overseas countries and territories. The economic well-being of our region depends largely on two sectors: tourism and trade. But advancing growth in these areas cannot happen without an efficient, affordable, and well-integrated transportation system. Encouragingly, in the case of tourism, we have seen positive trends. Stopover visitors to the Caribbean have increased significantly from 2023 to the first half of 2024, signaling renewed vitality in our aviation and tourism sectors. But to further unlock economic opportunities, the way forward requires a cohesive, unified approach, a common tourism strategy promoting multi-destination tourism products, a shared marketing plan, uniform processes, and seamless air and maritime transport services. To this end, the ACS provides a required regional platform. Since its inception, the ACS has been guided by a plan of action firmly rooted in facilitating greater air and maritime transport links throughout the Greater Caribbean. Transport is a foundational area of our work program, as it allows us to leverage a multiplier effect and advance in all other thematic areas under the association's purview. The way we trade our tourism products, how we connect to tourism markets, the achievement of our food security goals, or ability to adapt to natural disasters, deliver humanitarian aid and emergency services to even the most remote areas of the region, all depend on our regional transport links. To do so, we must adopt a systemic and integrated approach that takes into account the interconnected nature of our region. This is why the role of the Association of Caribbean States is so important in solving the transportation problem in the Greater Caribbean. Limited transport connection is not an issue that can be resolved at the bilateral or sub-regional level. The entire Caribbean, the entire region, needs to be fully engaged in these efforts to ensure the existence of a dynamic transport ecosystem based on multi-directional links that connect our markets and communities. The ACS exists to champion this cause and make it a reality. The drive to develop Caribbean air connectivity began some 5 years prior to the signing of the ACS Air Transport Agreement in 1999, when the ACS program, Uniting the Caribbean by Air and Sea, was created to help develop common aviation policy, as well as a joint regional database on maritime and port services, and foster closer relations with private sector transport stakeholders. To date, this air transport agreement remains one of the most ambitious attempts to liberalize regional airspace in the Greater Caribbean region. Initiatives such as these seek to harmonize air transport policies and liberalize the granting of traffic rights and market access. Currently, the ACS Air Transport Agreement has been ratified by 12 member states and 2 associate members. The agreement entered into force in 2008. It remains open for ratification and grants parties to the agreement the right to designate up to 2 airlines to carry out the agreed services. Thus, it is up to each country party to the agreement to implement the agreed operational provisions under the 5 internationally treaty-recognized freedoms of the air. As the panel discussion ensues and we continue to discuss the right response to the collective frustration with expensive and complicated intra-regional travel routes, I'd like us to also remember our collective responsibility to the environment and our commitment to make air transport more sustainable. Air transport produces about 3% of global carbon dioxide emissions and is one of the fastest growing sources of greenhouse gases, according to the International Council on Clean Transportation. Achieving greater sustainability in air transport is a complex challenge, though. Lifting passengers and cargo into the air and transporting them over long distances requires a considerable amount of energy. To address this problem, airlines have explored various strategies to reduce emissions. For instance, switching from traditional fossil fuels to renewable jet fuels, which produce fewer emissions. All of these trends affect the way we connect our regional destinations. A collaborative approach in this regard not only facilitates air connectivity, but also promotes mutual economic growth and sustainable development throughout our hemisphere. So as we move into the discussions, let us keep the idea of regional cooperation at the forefront, and may we explore innovative approaches to dismantle barriers, forge partnerships, and cultivate a stronger, interconnected, and prosperous region. I urge all present to actively participate, question assumptions, and to think outside of the box, because it is through our shared wisdom and creativity that we can forge a more interconnected region. On behalf of the Secretary General of the ACS, I thank you once again for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Reed, for your comprehensive analysis of air connectivity in the Caribbean and for highlighting the potential areas for collaboration. Please convey our best regards to Secretary General Sabonge. Our next speaker is Mr. Peter Serda, Regional Vice President for the Americas at the International Air Transport Association, IATA. Mr. Serda will discuss the role of air connectivity in linking our economies and how IATA supports this vital effort. I now give the floor to Mr. Peter Serda.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. It is my sincere pleasure to be here, and I thank the Organization of American States for the opportunity. I have a short presentation I would like to share with each of you in terms of the industry and how we're progressing here in the Americas region. First of all, for those who are unfamiliar with IATA, We are a multifaceted trade association representing over 330 airlines from 120 countries, representing 83% of the global air transportation system. Most of the airlines that most of you fly around the world into your countries are members of ours. Our regional headquarters is based in Montreal, right next to ICAO. Our regional office for the Americas is in Miami, and I am also responsible for 12 other offices throughout the Americas region. In terms of connectivity, I think this is an important figure to see where 90% of all tourists that come to the Americas region, they come by air. And that is very important in terms of job stimulation, contribution to GDP. And here you can see the different figures where the industry, both travel and tourism, is contributing to jobs, 50 million jobs in 2023, roughly 9% of all GDP contributions. By 2034, those numbers will go up to 60 million jobs and 9.6 of our country's GDP contribution. In terms of passenger forecasting, and this is important in terms of how many people will be traveling through our region in the next many years. In 2023, 2.8% of passengers will be increasing year by year by the year 2040. It will be 300 million new people traveling on board our aircraft. Just as an example, today, Brazil is a country of 200 million people. Half of that population has ever been on an airplane. And the vast average in our countries throughout the region are very comparable. And if there's one slide that we should look at and take home and work collaboratively, would be this one, is the number of our citizens that actually fly by air at least once a year. As you can see here, only Panama and Chile, their citizens travel at least once a year. The rest of our countries in the region travel less than one time a year per family members. When we compare it to North America, United States, or Canada, Canadians and Americans are flying roughly 2.5 trips a year, and Spain is one of the leading countries that is traveling 4.5. Our regional average is 0.65. So we have lots of significant work to do. Considering, and I wanted to illustrate Argentina, when you look at the country from north to south, it's the equal distance from Lisbon to Moscow. The difference in Europe to our region is we don't have high rail, we don't have good road systems, and really air connectivity is the only viable way for our citizens to travel safely, efficiently, within a marginal amount of time. So again, we do not have the same infrastructure, the same resources as in other parts of the world. Brazil is the size of, almost the size of the entire European continent. And when you look at flying or moving through Sao Paulo to Manaus, which is a 4-hour flight, it'll be roughly 38 hours of movement just to get to that destination. The challenges are certainly there in our region as well. We are a region that our industry is highly dependent on the political, social, and economic situation of our countries. And here you can see how difficult and volatile the situation is in our region. When you look at Latin American carriers compared to North American carriers, on what a North American airline makes compared to a Latin American Caribbean airline. It is a very difficult environment for airlines in Latin America to succeed. We were, by the Minister of St. Lucia was discussing on the challenges of intra-regional connectivity, and many of the challenges that we've had in the Caribbean to sustain airlines, viable airlines for extended period of time has always been a challenge. And when an airline ceases to operate, that part of the world, that part of the region is negatively impacted. And in many cases, the citizens and residents of those countries and those areas are left with no sort of connectivity. And when we talk about connectivity, it is not only talking about or speaking about the number of tourists that come and visit our countries. It is actually moving our people to be able to go to work, and more importantly also the cargo that comes on those airplanes. The pandemic would have had much more severe impact in our region if it wouldn't have been for air transportation. 92% of the vaccines in our region were moved by air. We have large amounts of towns and small communities that depend on air travel, although their citizens will never be on an airplane. If you go to Puerto Montt in Chile, which is a highly dependent community for fish, 96% of the fish is exported outside of Chile by air. 96% of the flowers in Colombia and Ecuador are exported outside of Ecuador by air. If we did not have air connectivity to serve these markets outside of Latin America, these communities would not exist. The fish would remain in the sea, and the flowers would end up not being cultivated and actually staying in the countries. So air connectivity is much more than just travel and tourism, bringing people to our communities. It's also helping our communities export our resources to other parts of the world. Where can we work? And I hope after this meeting, and we will be delighted to work with the OAS on multiple initiatives. Before we talked about taxation, infrastructure, two key components that we have to work as an industry. When we look at taxation, which is something my organization has challenged many governments throughout the region, you look at the current average of taxation in Latin America on a ticket. It is approximately 44% on average that a consumer, a resident of our country, will have to pay solely on taxation to get onto an airplane in addition to the rest of the airfare. That taxation in some parts of our region exceeds 60%. It is actually more expensive to pay the taxes than actual airfare from one point to another, where the global average is 27%. In an environment where today's consumers have the Wi-Fi, the web, to search for different places to invest, to travel, to visit, we are in a competitive market, not competing between St. Lucia or Barbados or Costa Rica and Nicaragua. We're actually competing on a global scale. And I will tell you, I live in Miami. It is cheaper in the winter to travel to Dubai than it is to travel to the Caribbean or to Costa Rica. A 17-hour flight compared to a 2.5-hour flight. So we as an industry, working with states, we have to do much more to compete, because St. Lucia is not competing with Barbados, Nicaragua is not competing with Costa Rica, Brazil is not competing with Argentina. We are competing with Dubai, we are competing with Europe, we're competing with Australia to attract more people to visit our regions and more business to come to our region and for our regions to export to other regions. And more importantly, we also have a social responsibility to create connectivity for our residents to be able to move intra-regional, which is probably one of the biggest objectives and goals that we should be working on in terms of improving intra-regional connectivity throughout Latin America and the Caribbean. Let me show you a couple examples of where collaborative work with governments produces positive results. Ecuador, several years ago, took a very proactive stance to become competitive in travel and tourism, to compete not only with Colombia and Peru, but with the rest of the world. You will see in June of 2023, they reduced their taxes in the market, and we saw a drastic increase in that area. So this is an example where if governments work with the industry to reduce taxation, we can actually reduce the amount of, increase the number of passengers. And my last slide, for us to be able to attract more connectivity, we need to make sure that we have the right infrastructure in place. And in many cases, we are way behind the curve on improving infrastructure. You see some countries that have done it, but also this is a challenge that we have in the region. Long lines because of integrated infrastructure and service and technologies, and another area where we need to be working. With that, I thank you for the time, and IATA is here to assist OAS in bringing additional connectivity to the region. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Serda, for sharing IATA's role and insights on enhancing air connectivity in the Americas. Our final panelist is Ms. Maria Luisa Navarro, Senior Director for Government Relations at Copa Airlines. Ms. Navarro will speak about Copa Airlines' experience in promoting regional connectivity and the challenges they face in working with governments across the Americas. I now give the floor to Ms. Maria Luisa Navarro.
Muy buenos días, Su Excelencia Alba Batiste, Ministro de Relaciones Exteriores de Santa Lucía. Muy apreciado Secretario General, un placer saludarte a la distancia. Señora Presidenta, Embajadora Elizabeth Darius Clark, señores panelistas que me antecedieron y distinguidos embajadores o representantes permanentes de los países. Un saludo especial a nuestra embajadora representante permanente, Ana Irena Delgado, si se encuentra en la sala. Hubiera mil veces preferido estar en Washington con ustedes, regresar una vez más a ese maravilloso edificio que alberga la OEA. Les pido disculpas por no haberlo logrado y espero poder por esta vía transmitirles un poco de la historia de éxito de Copa y del Hub de las Américas que opera en el Aeropuerto Internacional de Tocumen, que por supuesto es también la historia de éxito de Panamá. Y digo la historia de éxito de Panamá porque en preparación a este panel me hicieron algunas preguntas sobre la rentabilidad de Copa y los planes de crecimiento futuro. Y sí, en la organización estamos muy orgullosos de poder conectar las Américas desde nuestro centro de conexiones en Panamá, de ofrecer a nuestros pasajeros un servicio de clase mundial y de tener una clara estrategia de crecimiento para los próximos años. Pero lo realmente importante para este foro es que la conectividad aérea es un aliado para el desarrollo de los países. La conectividad internacional que ofrece Panamá ha sido parte fundamental del establecimiento en nuestro país de sedes de empresas multinacionales, ha permitido el establecimiento en Panamá de un hub logístico y financiero regional y por supuesto que aunque todavía nos queda mucho camino que recorrer, también ha potenciado Panamá como destino turístico. Todo lo anterior también representa la generación de empleos de alta calidad y el desarrollo de talento humano. Y ni hablar de los aportes a la economía mediante pagos a proveedores y aportes a las finanzas públicas que una empresa de nuestro tamaño hace todos los años. Y Panamá no es el único ejemplo. Como bien vieron en la última filmina de Peter, aunque Copa sigue liderando la conectividad intraamérica, hay muchos otros países que lo han hecho muy bien también. Y con otras líneas aéreas han desarrollado hubs en Bogotá, en Santiago de Chile, en Lima, en El Salvador, en Sao Paulo, todos apostando a la conectividad aérea como polo de desarrollo. En términos de la relación conectividad-Producto Interno Bruto, Panamá es el país con mejor desempeño en la región, incluyendo el turismo que llega por vía aérea, la aviación, el sector económico más importante de Panamá después del canal. Un estudio de Oxford Economics gestionado por la IATA hace ya algunos años indica que en Panamá hay cerca de 238.000 empleos sustentados por el sector de transporte aéreo y que más del 14% de nuestro Producto Interno Bruto es aportado por el transporte aéreo y por el aporte de los turistas que llegan a Panamá por vía aérea. Pero esto no lo ha logrado solamente una gestión efectiva de una línea aérea. Siendo Panamá una economía principalmente de servicios, con énfasis en los servicios internacionales, a lo largo de los años se le ha dado la importancia necesaria a la industria aérea en las políticas públicas, algo que no es siempre habitual en todas partes. Esto nos ha permitido desarrollar una industria competitiva, incluyendo la tan necesaria infraestructura aeroportuaria, a la que también se ha mencionado por mis antecesores. Siempre hay espacio para mejorar, y nuestro crecimiento en Copa más el de las otras líneas aéreas que operan en Tocumen, ponen significativa presión a la infraestructura del aeropuerto. Sin embargo, hay que reconocer que el desarrollo y crecimiento han sido continuos y alineados a las necesidades de la industria. Hace 2 años se inauguró en Panamá una segunda terminal que nos permite hoy contar con la capacidad que necesitamos las líneas aéreas para operar más vuelos y destinos, así como seguir atrayendo otras aerolíneas de todas partes del mundo. Trabajamos muy de cerca con las autoridades responsables para promover niveles de eficiencia operativa comparables con los mejores hubs de conexiones del mundo y para que las inversiones que se hagan de forma eficiente y ordenada. La mejor recomendación que puedo darles como línea aérea a este foro es que debemos promover menos restricciones y más competitividad para nuestro sector. Afortunadamente, cada vez son menos los países con cielos restringidos y usualmente o históricamente habían acompañado la intención de alguna forma proteger industrias locales. Copa es el perfecto ejemplo de que los cielos abiertos, que es política de Estado en Panamá desde hace décadas, promueven la conectividad aérea, la profesionalización de la industria y ofrecen mayores alternativas para los pasajeros. Sin ser científicos y con poca data disponible, me atrevo a decir que a los países con mayores restricciones no les ha ido mejor que a los países de cielo abierto. Y también que sus economías, especialmente el sector de viajes y turismo, han sufrido más o se han desarrollado menos rápido. Por esta razón, considero que es hora de levantar muchas de las restricciones existentes y las barreras de entrada donde este sea el caso, y dejar que las líneas aéreas compitamos en todos los mercados de América Latina y el Caribe en igualdad de condiciones. Lo otro que siempre hay que tener en mente, a lo que también han hecho relación mis antecesores, son los costos. Las líneas aéreas queremos seguir creciendo y en el caso de Copa es muchas veces a lugares donde no ha llegado nadie antes. Pero cada destino que evaluamos compite con el resto de los destinos potenciales donde no volamos. Y también los nuevos destinos compiten con aquellos destinos donde sí volamos, pero necesitamos más capacidad. Hacemos análisis exhaustivos que toman mucho tiempo para la asignación de una aeronave a una nueva ruta, porque no solo nos interesa llegar a un nuevo destino, sino hacerlo sostenible en el tiempo. Y en el ambiente en que estamos, con muchísima demanda y significativas demoras de entregas en aeronaves por casi todos los fabricantes, los destinos compiten aún más. Y las aerolíneas estaremos primero donde haya demanda, donde haya infraestructura adecuada y segura, donde el marco regulatorio sea adecuado y, por supuesto, donde los costos de operación sean competitivos. Hemos evolucionado mucho como región. Procuremos crear las condiciones para que la industria pueda seguir creciendo sobre una base de regulaciones, infraestructura y cargos que promuevan su desarrollo. De esta forma se aumentará el aporte al desarrollo económico y social de América Latina y en el Caribe. El crecimiento constante es la mejor forma de ganar. Restricciones, aumentos de tasas, impuestos y otros cargos restan competitividad y solo logran lo contrario. Si hacemos las cosas bien y trabajamos de la mano, gobierno, industria y gremios, podemos alcanzar el potencial que en Latinoamérica y el Caribe tenemos. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you, Ms. Navarro, for sharing Copa Airlines insights and for your valuable contributions on how we can improve air connectivity across the region. We now open the floor for questions from member states. I kindly remind delegations to keep their questions brief, as we will allow 3 minutes for both the questions and responses. The floor is open for questions. I see no request for the floor. St. Kitts Nevis, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I'd first like to thank Minister Bishop and our distinguished panelists. Baptiste, sorry, I think I said Bishop. I'm sure you're just as honorable and more so than any bishop. But Minister Baptiste, distinguished panelists, thank you for these insightful thoughts. I do have a concern / question that I believe Mr. Serta from IATA might want to address. Minister Baptiste pointed out a lot of the challenges that we have faced, especially in the Caribbean region, and how we need to balance the costs with taxes, for instance. He quite effectively articulated how the fact that our airports, for practically half of the day, are dormant, but we still have to light them, we still have to cool them. All of the economic costs associated with opening an airport prevails. And we know business is about profit, and partnership in business is about shared profit, shared risk. So my question is this: given the challenges that we already face in the Caribbean that causes us to have probably higher taxes, I think you said that the taxes are sometimes as much as 60% of the fare. But, you know, the taxes seem to be necessary from our standpoint because that's the only way we can actually, I'll move forward. We can actually try to cover our costs, and we have maybe higher landing fees than you might have in an area where the airlines make $13.10 profit per passenger. So we have challenges. So based on that, how does IATA actually justify the airlines imposing the MRG arrangement, minimum revenue guarantee arrangements? It seems to me it's an unfair partnership in that the governments have to pay the MRGs and still take all of the risk, and the airlines make the profit, and then the airlines complain about the fact that we have to impose landing fees and taxes. I mean, where is the give and take? That's my concern. Thank you.
Ayata?
Thank you. A very good and challenging question. First, I think we need to be very clear that the industry understands that taxes have to be paid for because the state has costs that it has to comply. There are costs associated with the airport and different services. It's the amount of the taxes where we challenge in many cases. Now, what we have done, and we've done it from our perspective and working with many states, is the balance. It's the balance of both parties winning. We want to attract more connectivity. We want to attract more flights to the different airports and cities and countries and islands, but it's doing it within a balanced perspective. I'll give the example of Barbados, which is near your area. Barbados worked with the industry very collaboratively to try to stimulate more intra-regional connectivity. And what they did was they actually lowered their taxations to test to see if more connectivity would actually begin to transpire. And in that case, it actually did. And in many other cases, it's about a joint responsibility and a joint win that we try to do. So while in some cases we will complain about high taxes, it's about maintaining the connectivity. And I can also speak in many countries where we have lost connectivity because airlines are simply pulling out because of the cost. And it's not only an issue of the airline winning. And I can tell you the industry is very cognizant of the challenges that many of our states have in the region, considering post-pandemic. We understand the importance of connectivity and job stability and improving the connectivity. It's about the dialogue, which I think is the most important perspective in this area. It's open, transparent dialogue to make sure that we can reach a reasonable agreement on what's fair cost to bear. Now, in terms of IATA managing airlines, we don't manage the airlines in terms of their revenues and their business commercial entities. These are public companies or government companies that bear their own responsibilities. But I can tell you those airlines that do charge more, the competition will eat them up because other airlines will actually reduce their prices. So just to summarize, what I hope you take away is the industry wants to collaborate. The industry understands its responsibilities in terms of taxations and what states need to do. What we want to do is just try to have more collaboration, more discussions in terms of how we can contribute through the taxation process, but that is fair and transparent in how it goes about. I hope I've answered it as best as I could.
Yes, you can.
I would still like you to address the issue of MRGs. Thanks. The minimum revenue guarantees.
I'm learning how to do it. Thank you. Look, again, these are issues that we as a trade association do not enter because different airlines have different levels of leverage and partnerships with different countries in terms of agreements are reached on bilateral situations. But one thing I will say is our industry, and it's probably, along with the mobile business, it's the fastest moving industry in terms of having to adapt and change. And many of us probably remember the times of Pan Am or Eastern. Even today's American Airlines or today's Caribbean Airlines are very different from what we saw many years ago. And it is about the bottom line, and it is about making money. And airlines in today's environment will operate to destinations where they have the most opportunities to succeed, the most opportunities to move passengers, because airplanes or aircraft are commodities. They can be moved from one place to another without any sort of discrimination, or with significant discrimination, I will say. Because if you have an airline that pulls out of your market and goes to another market, you are being discriminated to a certain point. That's why states, cities, municipalities are taking initiatives to establish relationships with airlines to build that connectivity. And it is something that we do not get involved in because some airlines do take advantage and have the benefit and some others do not.
Thank you, Mr. Serda. At this point, my minister, Minister Baptiste, would like to further clarify.
Thank you, Chair. Just by way of assisting the response, I think sometimes we look at the airline industry and most people believe that, what we see is really profit. That is one of the most challenging industries. And demand for air transport has grown considerably. Any other industry that had such strong demand would automatically make vast amount of profits, not with the airline industry. And part of the challenge is that if you own a corner shop and you sell bears in that corner shop, you have a case of bears that has 24, you sell 12 tonight, you have 12 bears to sell tomorrow. You have an aircraft with 24 seats, you sell 12 seats tonight. Once you close that door and the aircraft flies from point A to point B, you cannot sell those seats tomorrow. So airlines always try to balance supply and demand, sometimes overbook, a flight because there are the no-shows. Some people would just not show up for the flight, and the empty seats could have been sold. So, you know, with revenue management systems, they attempt to match that demand with supply. So the first thing is that the airlines are aware that it's not a very profitable industry. Most of the times, airlines make huge losses, and sometimes they move into Chapter 11 bankruptcy. So that is the very first issue. But in terms of the airport, there is a shift in the focus of the airport. Before, an airport would concentrate on aeronautical revenues, landing fees, NAVCOM charges. Today, airports are becoming massive shopping malls. So they try to maximize the revenue from commercial activity as opposed to aeronautical revenues. So this is how they may strike a balance in terms of reducing, you know, some taxes or certain charges to stimulate the demand for more passengers. I want to end my brief intervention by indicating that subsidies I've always believed should be utilized in a very strategic way. So if a country wants an airline to operate from a non-traditional destination, in Europe, for example, you want a Boeing 747 to come to Hiwanora, you may decide, or St. Kitts, you may decide to subsidize 10% of a seat so that real passengers can actually leave that non-traditional destination, come to St. Lucia. Again, they go to the hotels, they take the taxis, they spend in the local restaurants, so there is a net benefit to the economy. So I think we need to be strategic in the use of our subsidies.
Thank you, Minister. We will now give the floor to Bernarda Franco from the Dominican Republic, who wishes to join us on Kudo.
Buenos días. Veo que la cámara no se enciende, pero voy a comenzar reconociendo el esfuerzo del Consejo Interamericano para el Desarrollo Integral, CIDI, y de esta reunión, conectividad para desbloquear el crecimiento económico. Y quisiera referirme a la pregunta, primeramente uno, que habla de las medidas estratégicas que pueden adoptarse para mejorar la conectividad en América Latina y el Caribe, mejorando la viabilidad, la asequibilidad de las redes aéreas intrarregionales, en particular la disponibilidad en materia de conectividad. En ese sentido, quiero ilustrar sobre lo que es la política aerocomercial de la República Dominicana, el cual desde el año 2005 comenzó a implementarse a través de la concesión de vuelos charter para las aerolíneas no regulares. Y más adelante, en el año 2010, la Junta de Aviación Civil de la República Dominicana, a través de la resolución 180-10, emitió una resolución que tiene todo lo que es, recoge todo lo que es la política aerocomercial de la República Dominicana. A través de los años, el tráfico hacia el país se ha ido incrementando, así como las rutas de interés de muchas aerolíneas en volar hacia el país. En la actualidad tenemos 50 aerolíneas regulares volando y un número que en aerolíneas charter que tienen el interés o de volar de forma esporádica o de volar para conocer el mercado. Sin embargo, nuestra conectividad en la región y el Caribe, aunque ha ido mejorando, no es una conectividad totalmente efectiva. En ese sentido, volvemos a nuestra interrogante sobre las estrategias que pudiéramos implementar en la región para ampliar la conectividad. ya que a pesar de que nosotros tenemos una política aerocomercial de cielos abiertos y tenemos unos trámites de permisología bastante flexibles, no hemos logrado una conectividad total. El Caribe se presenta bastante deficiente, inclusive tenemos que ir hacia otros destinos en muchos casos para llegar a un destino que está bastante cerca de la República Dominicana. Entonces, no sé si de los panelistas, quienes pudieran responderme, pero me mantengo atento, así como a cualquier otra aclaración. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you, Didier. I would like to thank our panelists and delegations for this discussion, which has highlighted the critical role of air connectivity in fostering economic growth and regional integration. I thank our guests for taking the time to participate in today's meeting. Your insights have enriched our discussion, and we hope to continue working with you to strengthen air connectivity in the Americas. I now invite member state interventions. I kindly ask delegations to limit their interventions to 5 minutes. Mexico, you have the floor, Madam Ambassador.
Gracias, señora presidenta. Empiezo esta intervención diciendo ¡Viva México! Porque hoy inicia el gobierno de la presidenta Claudia Sheinbaum Pardo, la primera mujer presidenta de nuestra historia. Señora presidenta, mi delegación agradece la participación de los distinguidos panelistas que han intervenido en este consejo, muy en particular al ministro Alba Baptiste. México impulsa acciones encaminadas a garantizar el derecho humano a la movilidad segura, accesible, eficiente, inclusiva, sostenible y de calidad operativa en los sistemas de transporte aéreo y terrestre con el objetivo de conectar a las personas y reducir las brechas de desigualdad, sobre todo en las comunidades más vulnerables. Reconoce el papel central de la conectividad aérea como factor estratégico de la productividad y la competitividad en un mundo cada vez más globalizado, que acorta tiempos, acerca a nuestros pueblos y a nuestras culturas y alienta el crecimiento y el desarrollo con particular énfasis en el sector turístico. La conectividad aérea tiene un efecto multiplicador en la economía, el comercio y el turismo. Es generadora de empleos, inversión, así como de integración nacional y regional. México está posicionado como el 8º país a nivel mundial que más tráfico aéreo mueve y el 6º en la recepción de turismo internacional. Tan solo en el segundo trimestre de 2024, el transporte aéreo alcanzó un Producto Interno Bruto de 2.57 billones de pesos. Durante el periodo 2019-2024 del actual gobierno, se registraron 496 nuevas rutas internacionales en el país, impulsando así la llegada de turistas y la derrama económica correspondiente. Para el año en curso se tienen programadas 34,5 millones de asientos aéreos a México procedentes de diferentes regiones del planeta. Se dispone de una amplia red aeroportuaria integrada por 78 aeropuertos, 66 internacionales y 12 nacionales, operando 1.536 rutas de origen-destino, de las cuales 1.005 conectan con 46 naciones del mundo. En este contexto, al cierre de 2024, en los últimos 6 años, el Gobierno de México habrá invertido más de 95,000 millones de pesos en obras de modernización, ampliación y mejoramiento de aeropuertos muy importantes en los estados de Quintana Roo, de Campeche, de Chihuahua, de Puebla, Nayarit y Oaxaca, así como en los nuevos aeropuertos internacionales creados, construidos en este sexenio de Felipe Ángeles Ángeles en la zona metropolitana de la Ciudad de México y Felipe Carrillo Puerto en Tulum en la Riviera Maya. También en diciembre de 2023, la aerolínea del Estado mexicano Sociedad Anónima de CB volvió al aire y para junio del presente año ya ha transportado a 140,762 pasajeros en casi 3,000 operaciones y se prepara para ofrecer vuelos internacionales en 2025. Según datos de la Secretaría de Turismo, de enero a julio de 2024 se registraron en México 70,5 millones de pasajeros aéreos transportados, más de 35 millones viajaron en vuelos internacionales y 14 millones de estos fueron turistas. En cuanto a pasajeros transportados, de acuerdo con los principales mercados, América del Norte concentró el 86.4% del total, con 17,5 millones de pasajeros y un incremento de 5.4% respecto a 2023. En vuelos de Canadá a México viajaron casi 3 millones de pasajeros y de Centro y Sudamérica más de 2 millones de pasajeros. En julio pasado, la IATA reportó que en la última década México avanzó 11 lugares del sitio 21 al 9º puesto en conectividad aérea, convirtiéndose junto con Turquía en los 2 únicos nuevos integrantes del llamado Top 15 mundial con este rubro, gracias a medidas de facilitación comercial e inversión en infraestructura implementadas para el caso. Asimismo, de acuerdo con pronósticos efectuados en marzo pasado por el Sistema Económico Latinoamericano y del Caribe, México encabezaba junto con Brasil y Colombia la lista de los países con mejor conectividad internacional de Latinoamérica. La IATA ha confirmado que la demanda de transporte aéreo en los mercados internacionales de pasajeros creció en todas las regiones. En el caso de las aerolíneas latinoamericanas, el aumento interanual de la demanda fue de 15.3% y el factor de ocupación del 85.1%. Sin embargo, la región sigue enfrentando una limitada conectividad, en particular intrarregional, escasez de infraestructura aeroportuaria y en algunos casos de regulación excesiva que genera sobrecostos insostenibles. Por ello es necesario adoptar mejores prácticas para el diseño como para el proceso de políticas de transporte aéreo, donde la digitalización turística juega un papel central. En la experiencia mexicana, mediante la modificación al artículo 35 de la Ley de Migración, en 2022 se autorizó la incorporación de herramientas tecnológicas automatizadas para la internación a territorio nacional, como los filtros migratorios autónomos, con resultados significativos en aeropuertos como el de Cancún, Ciudad de México, Los Cabos, Guadalajara y Puerto Vallarta, que junto con Monterrey y Tijuana representan el 90% de los arribos del turismo. Particular efecto tuvo para México la creación en 2019 de la Agencia Federal de Aviación Civil, órgano administrativo desconcentrado de la Secretaría de Infraestructura, Comunicaciones y Transportes y autoridad reguladora de la industria de la aviación civil, establecida con el fin de asegurar que el transporte aéreo participe en el proceso de un crecimiento sostenido, sustentable y seguro que apoye la conformación de una sociedad mejor integrada, comunicada, pero sobre todo igualitaria. La agencia ha alentado, entre otras medidas de seguridad y para la sostenibilidad y rentabilidad de los aeropuertos, como eficiencia operativa, conectividad multimodal, desregulación de ingresos por actividades comerciales, fomento de asociaciones público-privadas, incentivos a las aerolíneas, e incorporación de un enfoque medioambiental de crecimiento con reducción de emisiones y renovación de la flota aérea. Señora Presidenta, hacemos votos porque se lleven a cabo más esfuerzos en las Américas para impulsar acciones en favor del incremento en conectividad aérea inter e intrarregional, para multiplicar las rutas aéreas en la región y propiciar mayor eficiencia y automatización en los puertos aéreos. Ello renovará el impulso en esta industria y el crecimiento y desarrollo y avanzará el cumplimiento de la Agenda 2030 de Desarrollo Sostenible bajo bajo una perspectiva de inclusión y justicia social centrada siempre en el bienestar de las personas. Gracias, señora presidenta.
Thank you, Ambassador, and I'd like to congratulate Mexico for taking this big step in the right direction. I now give the floor to Brazil.
Muito obrigada, senhora presidente. Primeiramente, gostaria de expressar minha gratidão ao ministro Alva Batiste e ao secretário-geral da OEA, Luiz Almagro, pelas valiosas contribuições ao nosso debate. Agradeço também aos painelistas, cujas apresentações aportaram informações relevantes para a presente sessão. Como já mencionado em várias intervenções, a conectividade aérea desempenha um papel crucial no desenvolvimento das economias de nossos países. No Brasil, temos visto um avanço significativo na infraestrutura aeroportuária. Contamos com 180 aeroportos operando voos regulares, dos quais 58 são geridos atualmente por empresas privadas, após a realização de 7 rodadas de concessões e uma relicitação. No entanto, a maioria desses aeroportos ainda opera com baixa frequência e horários pouco convenientes para os passageiros, o que resulta em uma alta concentração de voos em nosso principal hub, o aeroporto de Guarulhos, em São Paulo. Para lidar com essa situação e melhorar a conectividade de todo o território nacional, temos buscado explorar alternativas que promovam a desconcentração da nossa malha aérea, por exemplo, com o aumento de voos charter e a implementação de voos multidestino. Nesse sentido, iniciativas como o Programa de Aceleração do Turismo Internacional, PAT, que visa aumentar o número de assentos e voos internacionais com destino ao Brasil, são essenciais. Com o apoio do governo, companhias aéreas e aeroportos, o PAT já demonstrou seu impacto positivo na economia, estimado em 134 milhões de reais. Além disso, a expansão das rotas regionais, a exemplo das recentes ligações entre Belém e Paramaribo e Cuiabá e Santa Cruz, tem impulsionado o turismo, além de abrir novas oportunidades de negócios. A experiência com o Chile também ilustra isso claramente. De 2019 a 2023, o número de turistas chilenos que visitaram o Brasil cresceu substancialmente, comprovando a importância da expansão de rotas aéreas diretas. No âmbito sul-americano, também pode ser destacada a iniciativa brasileira, liderada pela Agência Nacional de Aviação Civil, ANAC, que tem buscado avançar na agenda de integração aérea por meio do projeto prioritário de integração regional latino-americana. O projeto, tratado no contexto da Rede de Infraestrutura do Consenso de Brasília, visa a facilitar o trânsito de pessoas, reduzir os custos operacionais e aumentar a segurança da aviação regional. Segundo a ANAC, evoluções nos entendimentos bilaterais sobre a matéria também têm permitido avanços. Recentes modificações adotadas nos acordos de serviços aéreos, concluídos entre países sul-americanos, prevêem maior abertura do ponto de vista dos direitos de tráfego, o que abre possibilidades mais amplas de rotas. Contudo, as diferentes regulamentações a nível local e as exigências específicas de cada país ainda impõem restrições à livre prestação de serviços aéreos. Precisamos trabalhar juntos para harmonizar essas normas e eliminar barreiras que limitam a conectividade, ampliando as opções de voo e, consequentemente, as oportunidades de desenvolvimento econômico e social. Além disso, devemos considerar o potencial do transporte conjunto de cargas e passageiros. No Brasil, a carga aérea representa menos de 1% da matriz de transporte, um número que pode e deve ser aumentado. Essa abordagem integrada poderia não apenas melhorar a eficiência do setor aéreo, mas também contribuir para o crescimento do comércio e do turismo. Assim como em outros países de nosso hemisfério, a infraestrutura do setor aéreo brasileiro ainda carece de desenvolvimento, apesar de já termos obtido avanços. É, portanto, crucial que continuemos a investir na modernização e expansão de nossas instalações aeroportuárias. A baixa conectividade é um dos principais gargalos de infraestrutura em nossa região. Devemos unir esforços para explorar voos multidestinos e mistos de carga e passageiros. Essas estratégias não apenas reduzirão custos, mas também fortalecerão a conectividade aérea no hemisfério, promovendo o crescimento econômico e a integração tão necessários em nossos tempos. Muito obrigada, senhora presidente.
Thank you, Brazil. I now give the floor to St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Thank you, Chair. Honorable Minister Baptiste, Secretary General, prominent representatives and alternates, panelists, staff at the Secretariat, good morning. Chair, my delegation wishes to thank the Honorable Minister for his keynote address, as well as to the panelists for their recommendations and for their presentations. Chair, my delegation commends you for continuing the conversation on air connectivity, a topic that merits deep reflection as countries seek to realize the full potential of the aviation sector to support sustainable development while honoring their commitments to reduce CO2 from planes and fuels. Within the Caribbean region, connectivity is relatively weak, and it's limited to a few countries. Most of the Caribbean CIDs rely heavily on tourism as a source of income, so connectivity is crucial for their tourism industry and the movement of their people. Connectivity is also important for humanitarian and post-disaster response. But despite disparities in financial capacity, these nations with limited aviation revenue from low traffic volumes, among other things, have to adhere to the same high standards for aviation safety and capacity. And there are 67 airports in the CARICOM region, and the Cayman Islands, Anguilla, and the British Virgin Islands, and more than 9 local airlines serving the Caribbean region. The region's airline also holds excellent air safety records. So how do we enhance air connectivity among OAS member states? Greater cooperation among all shareholders in the aviation industry is a start. Consolidation among smaller airlines. We're looking at harmonizing aviation laws and regulatory practices, financing, proper management and operation, and finally improving airport infrastructure. But in the midst of all of this, Chair, we still have to explore alternative aviation power sources, such as electric power and biofuels, to honor our commitments to the Paris Climate Agreement. Unfortunately, this is not optional, it is existential. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, St. Vincent. I now give the floor to El Salvador.
Muchas gracias, señora presidenta. Reconocemos y valoramos la participación del honorable señor Alba Baptiste, ministro de Relaciones Exteriores, Comercio Internacional, Aviación Civil y Asuntos de la Diáspora de Santa Lucía, así como del secretario general. Agradecemos la convocatoria de esta sesión y las intervenciones interesantes de las y los panelistas. En la estrategia del Gobierno de El Salvador hacia el crecimiento económico, inclusivo y sostenible, la conectividad aérea representa un motor fundamental para el fortalecimiento o desarrollo de sectores económicos claves como el turismo y el comercio internacional, que contribuyen a que la economía nacional continúe creciendo en los últimos años a un ritmo del 3.2%. Por ello, es clave impulsar acciones articuladas alrededor de la industria aeronáutica en materia de inversión, modernización, capacitación, el establecimiento de sinergias público-privadas, entre otras acciones que abran las puertas a nuevas inversiones y desarrollos en este rubro, en la creación de empleos dentro de un marco jurídico seguro y estable. En los últimos años, El Salvador se ha convertido en un hub muy importante de conectividad aérea, colocándose entre los principales centros de conexión de la región centroamericana. Trabajamos para agilizar y digitalizar los trámites, modernizar la infraestructura logística para una mejor gestión en nuestras fronteras. Paralelamente, trabajamos en la modernización del marco jurídico y en dotar de capacidades al talento humano público y privado. La diversificación de destinos y la accesibilidad a nuevas rutas fortalecen la conectividad del país con el resto del mundo. Hemos aperturado nuevas rutas aéreas a Montreal, Miami, República Dominicana. Se ha reactivado la ruta aérea directa con Lima, Perú, facilitando así los viajes de negocios y turismo para los salvadoreños y visitantes extranjeros por igual. Las significativas inversiones en infraestructura en el Aeropuerto Internacional San Óscar Arnolfo Romero y Galdames lo han convertido en uno de los más grandes y modernos de Centroamérica, generando 33.800 operaciones de vuelos de pasajeros, que representa un incremento del 22% respecto a 2023, y la movilización de más de 24 millones de kilogramos de mercancías de importación y exportación, representando un 26% más que el año pasado. Asimismo, desde mayo de 2024, la Autoridad de Aviación Civil de El Salvador finalizó el proyecto de certificación del Aeropuerto Internacional de Ilopango, por lo que El Salvador es el único país de Centroamérica en contar con 2 terminales internacionales certificadas. Con el apoyo del Banco de Desarrollo de América Latina y el Caribe, el CAF, el programa El Salvador Vuela invertirá 320 millones para continuar la modernización, fortalecimiento y construcción de infraestructura aeronáutica, orientada a reducir los costos y tiempos de conectividad por vía aérea, a fin de impulsar el sector turístico y la competitividad del país, y a la vez fortalecer la resiliencia y capacidad de respuesta ante desastres naturales. Asimismo, las autoridades salvadoreñas, en sus esfuerzos de mejorar la conectividad en el 2023 y consolidar una industria sostenible con capacidad de adaptabilidad e innovación, oficializaron un acuerdo de cooperación con el sector privado para establecer un aeroclúster, conformado por 8 empresas, 3 centros académicos y las instituciones gubernamentales vinculadas a este rubro. Este mecanismo es considerado como triple hélice, porque articula esfuerzos e impulsa acciones de innovación, atracción de inversión extranjera, mejoras en la infraestructura y formación especializada de personal que contribuya al crecimiento y al desarrollo del sector de servicios aeronáuticos y aeroespaciales en el país. Señora Presidenta, mejorar la conectividad aérea es también una estrategia clave para el combate a la pobreza en la región. Se requiere voluntad política y esfuerzos de coordinación o acción conjunta en un mundo globalizado y cada vez más interconectado. Además del diálogo, debemos retomar las buenas prácticas y encontrar sinergias para resolver los desafíos identificados en el desarrollo de nuevas rutas aéreas regionales, reducir los altos costos que limitan el flujo de pasajeros o encarecen los productos, reducir los altos impuestos y tasas aeroportuarias e incrementar la inversión en infraestructura y capacitación. A través del CIDI podemos identificar entre los diferentes procesos ministeriales y de cooperación los espacios que permitan fortalecer la cooperación y conectividad interamericana para superar estos y otros retos. Muchas gracias, señora Presidenta.
Thank you, Ambassador. I now give the floor to Peru.
Señora Presidenta, agradecemos la inclusión de este tema en la agenda de este Consejo y también a los panelistas expertos que nos acompañaron en esta sesión por sus ilustrativas presentaciones. Pensamos que las exposiciones de los panelistas han definido cabalmente la situación actual y la agenda pendiente de la conectividad aérea de nuestra región. Tomemos debida nota de lo que aquí se ha expuesto. El Perú es un país con una topografía accidentada que se extiende desde el Pacífico hasta los Andes y la vasta Amazonía. En este escenario, la conectividad aérea es esencial. Por otro lado, el Perú se encuentra ubicado en el centro del continente sudamericano, en la cuenca oceánica más grande del planeta. Gracias a ello, tiene ventajas comparativas para consolidarse como hub de vuelos importantes. En las últimas 3 décadas, de hecho, la infraestructura peruana ha mejorado considerablemente, pero aún enfrenta barreras para brindar un acceso más dinámico a nivel nacional e internacional. Nuestra experiencia algo puede aportar. Las redes intrarregionales aún no alcanzan todo su potencial. Para lograrlo, como se ha indicado aquí, es necesario promover mayor competencia entre aerolíneas, mejorar la infraestructura aeroportuaria y crear incentivos para nuevas rutas. La experiencia peruana indica que las asociaciones público-privadas pueden estimular la inversión en la modernización de los aeropuertos y la expansión de las rutas. También es fundamental armonizar normas y procedimientos aduaneros y reducir trámites burocráticos para agilizar el transporte aéreo, facilitar el comercio y promover una mayor conectividad. Finalmente, debemos encontrar un equilibrio entre el aumento de la conectividad aérea y el compromiso de nuestras naciones con la reducción de las emisiones de gases de efecto invernadero. El desarrollo de nuevas tecnologías y la promoción de combustibles sostenibles para la aviación representan oportunidades cruciales en ese sentido. Los Estados miembros debemos incentivar la adopción de estas tecnologías. Para que la conectividad aérea se convierta en una herramienta de crecimiento económico, integración y desarrollo, debemos actuar de manera decidida y coordinada. Solo a través de la cooperación y la implementación de reformas estratégicas podremos desbloquear el potencial de nuestra región, mejorando el bienestar de nuestros pueblos y asegurando un crecimiento inclusivo y sostenible. El Perú está comprometido en apoyar iniciativas que promuevan estas metas y espera trabajar junto a los demás Estados miembros en la construcción de un futuro más conectado y próspero. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Ambassador. I now give the floor to the Ambassador of Argentina.
Muchas gracias, presidente. Agradezco especialmente las presentaciones de los destacados panelistas en la sesión de hoy, así como las palabras del ministro de Relaciones Exteriores, Comercio Internacional, Aviación Civil y Asuntos de la Diáspora de Santa Lucía, honorable señor Alba Baptiste, y del secretario general Luis Almagro. La República Argentina comparte las observaciones formuladas respecto de la necesidad de impulsar el crecimiento económico en la región, en particular a través de la conectividad. En este sentido, nuestro gobierno se encuentra implementando una política de cielos abiertos, en las que ya firmó instrumentos bilaterales amplios en materia de servicios aéreos con Chile, Ecuador, Perú, Uruguay, Paraguay, Panamá, Canadá y Brasil, y se encuentra negociando con Colombia, Surinam, Costa Rica, República Dominicana, El Salvador y México. El objetivo final es establecer una zona común denominada cielos únicos, en la que haya una libre circulación de bienes, servicios, capital, personas e ideas. Ello en el entendimiento de que una mejor conectividad puede ayudar a los países a superar los obstáculos al comercio, fomentar la integración y acelerar la cooperación, estimulando así el crecimiento económico y ampliando las oportunidades para los pueblos de la región. Asimismo, desde el 10 de diciembre del 2023 a la fecha, en nuestro país se han aprobado una serie de modificaciones normativas, incluida la reforma del Código Aeronáutico, a los fines de garantizar la libre competencia y la simplificación de los trámites en materia de acceso a los mercados aéreos. Y se está trabajando también fuertemente en una modernización del sistema arancelario, impositivo y laboral relativo a la actividad aerocomercial. La Argentina está comprometida a seguir trabajando en conjunto en pos de avanzar en el desarrollo económico de nuestra región. Muchísimas gracias por su atención.
Thank you, Ambassador. I now give the floor to the representative of the United States.
Thank you, Chair. On behalf of the United States, I'd like to express our gratitude to Secretary General Luis Almagro for his opening remarks, the Honorable Minister Alva Baptiste for his address, and the panelists for their informative presentations. Each of today's speakers have emphasized the importance of increasing air connectivity and accommodating integrated air traffic networks as a means for the development and future of our shared region, as it can result in widespread economic benefits across the Americas. The United States remains committed to expanding the number of international passenger and cargo flights, promoting increased travel and trade, enhancing productivity, and spurring high-quality job opportunities and economic growth. And we accomplish this in part by negotiating open skies agreements with countries around the world. Open skies agreements are bilateral agreements that the U.S. negotiates with other countries to provide rights for airlines to offer international passenger and cargo services. The United States currently has agreements with more than 130 partners in all geographic regions of the world. These agreements expand cooperative marketing opportunities between airlines. They liberalize charter regulations, improve flexibility for airline operations, and commit both governments to high standards of safety and security. They are pro-consumer, pro-competition, and pro-growth, and they facilitate countless new cultural links worldwide. The United States looks forward to continuing discussions and working with member states and partners to unlock further opportunities for economic growth that can benefit the entire region. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, United States. I now give the floor to the Ambassador of Panama.
Muchas gracias, señora presidenta. Siendo la primera vez que hago uso de la palabra en este consejo, permítame saludarla. De igual manera, presento la seguridad de mi distinguida consideración a su excelencia Alba Baptiste, Ministro de Relaciones Exteriores, Comercio Internacional, Aviación Civil y Asuntos de la Diáspora de Santa Lucía. Su excelencia Luis Almagro, Secretario General, a la señora Kim Osborne, Secretaria Ejecutiva de este consejo, y a los estimados y estimadas representantes permanentes e interinos que nos acompañan esta mañana. Aprovecho igualmente saludar a los panelistas, en especial a la licenciada María Luisa Navarro, directora senior de Relaciones Gubernamentales de Copa Airlines, como panameña, muy orgullosos del trabajo que están desempeñando. Es para mí un honor hacer el uso de la palabra en nombre de la República de Panamá en esta sesión ordinaria, y antes de iniciar deseo agradecer a estos panelistas nuevamente por sus valiosos aportes. De igual manera a la Presidencia y a Secretaría Ejecutiva por su continua labor en promover la conectividad como un motor clave para el desarrollo económico de nuestras Américas. Como es bien conocido, Panamá, por su ubicación geográfica privilegiada y su compromiso histórico con la integración regional, reconoce la importancia fundamental de la conectividad, en particular la conectividad aérea, para desbloquear el crecimiento económico y la cooperación regional. Como país que alberga el hub de las Américas, uno de los centros de conexiones aéreos más importantes de la región, estamos plenamente conscientes del impacto positivo que una mayor conectividad puede tener en la facilitación del comercio, el turismo y la inversión. El Aeropuerto Internacional de Tocumen, principal puerta de entrada a Panamá y uno de los hubs aéreos más importantes de Latinoamérica, con su nueva terminal ha alcanzado cifras históricas en el flujo de viajeros. Durante los primeros 8 meses de este año se movilizaron 12.766.909 pasajeros, superando los 11.696.095 registrados en el mismo periodo en el 2023, lo que representa un crecimiento del 9.16%. Estos números no solo subrayan el papel central del aeropuerto de Tocumen en la región, sino también el crecimiento sostenido de Panamá en su esfuerzo por mejorar la conectividad regional e internacional. Desde el Gobierno de Panamá estamos comprometidos con la región de las Américas y por eso siempre estamos haciendo esfuerzos para mejorar esta conectividad, tanto marítima como aérea. Creemos firmemente que la conectividad es la clave para superar los obstáculos al comercio regional y para abrir nuevas oportunidades económicas para toda América Latina y el Caribe. Señora Presidenta, permítame aplaudir los avances en la región de América Central, donde el 37% de los vuelos ya son intrarregionales. Este es un ejemplo inspirador de cómo los países podemos trabajar juntos para aumentar la integración económica. En este mismo sentido, reconocemos los desafíos que aún persisten en otras subregiones, como el Caribe y América del Sur, que enfrentan barreras importantes para una mayor conectividad. Por ello, hacemos un llamado a los Estados miembros a fortalecer los marcos normativos regionales y a continuar promoviendo iniciativas como el Acuerdo Multilateral de Cielos Abiertos. Es de suma importancia buscar un equilibrio entre la expansión de la conectividad aérea y la protección del medio ambiente. Panamá, como país carbono negativo, reafirmamos nuestro compromiso con la reducción de emisiones de gases de efecto invernadero y creemos que es posible promover el crecimiento económico mientras trabajamos en un futuro más sostenible. Finalmente, Panamá reafirma su disposición a colaborar con todos los Estados miembros, como lo hemos hecho hasta ahora, para mejorar la conectividad aérea en la región. Creemos que la acción coordinada y multilateral es el único camino para lograr un desarrollo inclusivo y sostenible. Estamos listos para jugar un rol activo en estos esfuerzos y contribuir con nuestra experiencia en materia de conectividad y comercio. Señor presidente, distinguidos delegados, estamos convencidos de que una mayor conectividad aérea será una herramienta clave para alcanzar el crecimiento económico que nuestras naciones tanto necesitan. Este es el momento para consolidar nuestras alianzas y transformar las barreras en oportunidades. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Ambassador. I have the pleasure now of giving the floor to the representative from Guatemala.
Muchas gracias, señora presidenta. Buenos días, distinguidos embajadores y delegados. Mi delegación reconoce la presencia en esta sesión del CIDI del Ministro de Relaciones Exteriores, Comercio Internacional, Aviación Civil y Asuntos de la Diáspora de Santa Lucía, Alba Baptiste, como también la presencia del secretario Luis Almagro. Con su venia, señora presidenta, mucho agradeceré que la Secretaría proyecte un video con la intervención de la licenciada Azucena Zelaya, Directora General de Aeronáutica Civil de Guatemala, para que participe en este diálogo entre los Estados miembros. Muchas gracias.
Les envío un cordial saludo desde la ciudad de Guatemala. Aunque mi deseo es estar con ustedes, por compromisos previamente adquiridos no me fue posible. Sin embargo, quiero platicarles sobre la conectividad aérea para contribuir al crecimiento económico. En México, en diciembre de 1973, las autoridades de aviación civil de los estados participantes en las deliberaciones de la Segunda Conferencia Latinoamericana de Autoridades Aeronáuticas establecen la Comisión Latinoamericana de Aviación Civil, cuyo acrónimo es CLAC, con la finalidad de alcanzar la más amplia colaboración para resolver problemas de aviación civil en el área geográfica formada por los estados situados en América del Sur, América Central, incluyendo Panamá, México y los estados del Caribe. Para fines de simplificar esta área geográfica, la denominamos generalmente como Latinoamérica. Para alcanzar su finalidad, la CLAC tiene estructurado el foro y los formatos de comunicación entre todos sus estados miembros que permiten además la posibilidad de aprovechar las oportunidades que en materia de aviación civil se presentan para la región, tanto para debatir en relación a temas concretos como para apoyarnos para alcanzar metas específicas. La CLAC es un organismo de carácter consultivo y sus conclusiones, recomendaciones y resoluciones están sujetas a la aprobación de cada uno de los estados miembros de la Comisión. Actualmente soy la directora general interina de la Dirección General de Aeronáutica Civil de Guatemala y presidente de la CLAC por el periodo bianual de 2024 y 2025. El Consejo para el Desarrollo Integral CIDI de la Organización de los Estados Americanos, OEA, nos giró la invitación al Estado de Guatemala para participar en este debate sobre la conectividad aérea para desbloquear el crecimiento económico. He querido, sin embargo, iniciar mi presentación exponiendo la formación y objetivos de la CLAC, así como su fecha de constitución hace más de 50 años, subrayando que su objetivo primordial es promover a las autoridades de aviación civil de los Estados miembros una estructura adecuada dentro de la cual podamos discutir y planear todas las medidas requeridas para la cooperación y coordinación de las actividades de la aviación civil en la región. El título del presente foro tiene implícito e implica que la baja conectividad aérea contribuye a bloquear el desarrollo y crecimiento económico de los estados latinoamericanos, con la consecuencia que ello trae y las que podemos resumir en dos palabras: subdesarrollo y pobreza. La conectividad aérea nacional e internacional multiplica las oportunidades para el desarrollo y crecimiento de una economía. Particularmente en las funciones de la CLAC se encuentra promover un mayor intercambio de información estadística entre los Estados miembros y proponer medidas suplementarias para lograr un desarrollo más acelerado de la facilitación en el movimiento de pasajeros, carga y correo dentro de la región. La facilitación en el movimiento de pasajeros, carga y correo es el formato de la aviación civil para definir la facilitación de la conectividad aérea. Uno de los objetivos estratégicos de la CLAC es Potenciar la coordinación entre las autoridades de aviación civil y demás actores del sector aéreo e impulsar el trabajo de los grupos técnicos para viabilizar el desarrollo sostenible del sector en Latinoamérica y especifica dentro de sus líneas estratégicas ampliar y mejorar la conectividad entre los estados de la región a través del establecimiento de relaciones aerocomerciales. Acepté participar en este foro porque creí oportuno que tanto el Consejo para el Desarrollo Integral CIDI y por su conducto, la Organización de Estados Americanos OEA, tengan información oportuna sobre la planificación de actividades de la aviación civil organizada de América Latina, en coordinación y bajo la supervisión de Organización de la Aviación Civil Internacional OACI, orientadas a optimizar la conectividad de la región latinoamericana en su conjunto y de sus subregiones, con el objetivo de coordinar actividades pertinentes con CIDI y compartirles oportunamente metas alcanzadas en relación a la conectividad aérea y el desarrollo de la aviación civil. La conectividad aérea entre países o entre subregiones es un compromiso bilateral o multilateral alcanzado por las Direcciones Generales de Aeronáutica Civil de los Estados, de acuerdo a formatos y normas establecidas dentro del marco de la aviación civil mundial. Lo anteriormente expuesto ejemplifica la solidez del sector aéreo latinoamericano en sus relaciones y manejo de sus oportunidades de tráfico aéreo. Somos el complemento ideal para contribuir al desarrollo y crecimiento de las economías de nuestros estados. Y la normativa en el campo del sector aéreo están definidas y coordinadas al amparo de las regulaciones internacionales de la OACI. Me parece que los estados no debemos legislar para proteger el desarrollo de los mercados en base a manejos discrecionales de frecuencias o subir impuestos o tarifas en el ámbito aéreo nacional o internacional. No estamos diciendo nada nuevo al mostrar este enfoque. Estamos siguiendo el camino que ha sido recorrido por Europa, por citar un ejemplo exitoso. Como presidente de la CLAC, me llena de orgullo mostrar el avance concreto que hemos conseguido y espero confiada que más estados de la región se sumen a estas iniciativas o a otras parecidas que permitan una mayor conectividad y mayor prosperidad para nuestra gente. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Guatemala. I now give the floor to Paraguay.
Muchas gracias, señora presidenta. La delegación del Paraguay saluda el tratamiento de la cuestión conectividad aérea para desbloquear el crecimiento económico en la presente sesión de este Consejo. Igualmente, agradece las exposiciones de los oradores de las que hemos tomado debida nota. Reconoce en particular la presencia del Ministro de Relaciones Exteriores, Comercio Internacional, Aviación Civil y Asuntos de la Diáspora de Santa Lucía, honorable señor Alba Baptiste, quien nos brindó importantes detalles sobre la cuestión. Excelencias, el tema resulta de fundamental importancia para la región, ya que el sistema de transporte aéreo es un elemento clave para la promoción del comercio, el turismo, las inversiones y la integración en las Américas. Para nuestro país, el asunto cobra una relevancia particular, dada nuestra estratégica ubicación en el centro de Sudamérica y nuestra condición de Estado en desarrollo sin litoral marítimo. El transporte aéreo en nuestro país ha experimentado en los últimos años un notable crecimiento en un contexto de recuperación tras la pandemia del coronavirus. Como ejemplo, en el año en curso, el flujo de pasajeros en nuestro país presenta un incremento del 7% con relación al año 2023. En tal sentido, celebramos que este año la empresa pública nacional estratégica boliviana de aviación ha abierto vuelos entre Asunción y Santa Cruz de la Sierra, mientras se prevé que próximamente Azul Líneas Aéreas desarrolle vuelos de temporada entre nuestra capital y ciudades brasileñas como Curitiba, Florianópolis, Recife y Campinas. Igualmente, la aerolínea paraguaya Paranair aumentó la frecuencia de los vuelos entre Asunción y Córdoba, así como tiene proyectado habilitar dentro de poco el itinerario entre la capital paraguaya y Salta, lo que supondrá un importante avance entre la conectividad aérea del Paraguay con el interior de la hermana República Argentina. En este punto queremos destacar la suscripción en julio pasado del nuevo Pacto de Cielos Abiertos entre Paraguay y Argentina, que bien mencionó la distinguida representante permanente del hermano país. Asimismo, resaltamos la importancia que ha cobrado el Aeropuerto Internacional Silvio Pettirossi de la ciudad de Luque, Gran Asunción, no solo como el principal hub para transporte aéreo del Paraguay, sino también para los habitantes de las provincias argentinas próximas a nuestro país. Sin embargo, a pesar de estos progresos significativos, el Paraguay continúa entre los países con menor conectividad aérea en la región, incluso teniendo una de las tasas aéreas más bajas. Esto en una región que de por sí presenta comparativamente bajos índices de conectividad aérea, como bien lo explicaron los distinguidos oradores y representantes. Resulta imprescindible, pues, abordar los retos que deben ser abordados a los efectos de revertir esta situación y que en el caso del Paraguay le permita constituirse en el hub que su ubicación geográfica en el corazón de Sudamérica le propicia. En este contexto, la delegación del Paraguay estima que espacios multilaterales como este Consejo son idóneos para el intercambio de experiencias y buenas prácticas entre diversos países y actores que contribuyan a poder identificar herramientas y mecanismos para promover la conectividad aérea en la región y en nuestro país, así como para determinar oportunidades de colaboraciones y cooperaciones más profundas entre nuestros estados en la materia. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Paraguay. I now have the pleasure of giving the floor to the Ambassador of the Bahamas. Ambassador, you have the floor.
Good morning. Chair, we take this opportunity to congratulate and commend you and your delegation for its foresight in identifying this critical subject and in convening this morning's CIDI meeting under the theme, Air Connectivity to Unlock Economic Growth. It is also indeed an honor and a privilege to extend a warm welcome to Minister Baptiste to the House of the Americas on this not-so-sunny St. Lucian day here in Washington, D.C. Minister, you never disappoint in offering insightful remarks. You have certainly outlined the challenges and opportunities facing air connectivity in the region. I'd also like to thank the presenters from ACS, IATA, ICAO, and COPA for their valuable contributions to this morning's dialogue. As is the case for many colleague member states, tourism is the lifeblood of the Bahamian economy. And as the blood within our bodies requires biological infrastructure to achieve its ends, our airports are the primary connective infrastructure facilitating the movement of people throughout our region. As an archipelago spread across 100,000 miles of territory, the Bahamas faces its own connectivity challenges. Despite being a country of only 400,000 residents, the Bahamas maintains more than 20 airports across the country that receive international flights and that facilitates transportation of goods and people between the far-flung islands that comprises the country. Notwithstanding, during the COVID era, over 3 years period, the Bahamas enjoyed approximately 1.8 million in air arrivals, with a total air and sea arrivals of 9.65 million. As a result, the Bahamas prioritizes continued enhancement of both domestic and international connectivity to the country, and we afford importance to the broader goals of regional connectivity. The Bahamas' National Aviation Strategic Plan is an initiative designed to modernize and elevate the country's aviation sector with a focus on enhancing and providing a more seamless experience for both inter-island travel and international travel. Central to the plan is the redevelopment of critical airport infrastructure, including key hubs outside the capital to meet international standards and increase capacity. Another key component of the plan is expanding international flight routes to bolster the country's position as a regional aviation hub, thereby attracting more airlines and more visitors in numbers. The strategy also emphasizes the importance of upgrading safety protocols and air traffic management systems, incorporating advanced technology, and also including improvements in efficiency and ensuring compliance with global aviation regulations, all with the comprehensive objective of promoting more sustainable tourism. However, high taxes, fees, and charges, often comprising half or more of the final cost of flight tickets, poses a significant challenge to accessibility, yet infrastructure does not build itself. Beyond the costs of construction and maintenance for an extensive network of airports, there are additional financial considerations and demands related to climate crisis mitigation, energy cost offsets, and incentives such as a minimum revenue guarantees to facilitate connectivity to remote parts of the country. While these financial challenges are all real, it is incumbent upon us to look beyond simply increasing taxes and fees to underwrite these costs. We must explore creative financing models, public-private partnerships, and other innovative solutions to reduce the strain on travelers and to ensure that air connectivity remains affordable and accessible for all. The Bahamas looks forward to further dialogue, such as the session that's been convened today, with member states, strategic partners, and stakeholders on solutions to lower the cost of travel within the region. We also see value in the OAS serving as a platform for sharing of best practices and building capacity around sustainable innovations in the aviation sector. We encourage CIDI to consider how this could be incorporated into its work throughout the partnerships. And again, we congratulate you, and we also congratulate the Executive Secretary for Integral Development and her team, and we thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Ambassador. We'll give the floor to the representative from the Dominican Republic.
Muchas gracias, señora Presidente. Agradecemos la inclusión de este importante debate en la agenda del CIDI, así como la participación del ministro Alba Baptiste y del secretario Luis Almagro. Igualmente valoramos las presentaciones ilustrativas y recomendaciones de los panelistas. Tengo el honor de presentar al director de Transporte Aéreo de la Junta de Aviación Civil de la República Dominicana, señor Héctor Christopher. Tiene usted la palabra.
Buenos días, buenas tardes. Bueno, en materia de conectividad, la República Dominicana ha hecho un esfuerzo enorme desde el año 2006, a partir de la nueva ley promulgada, la 491-06 de Aviación Civil. Hemos firmado acuerdos bilaterales con más de 70 naciones a nivel mundial y en la región de Latinoamérica tenemos acuerdos bilaterales con 18 naciones de América del Sur y América Central. También en el año 2013 cambiamos el artículo 237 de la Ley de Aviación Civil, permitiendo la inversión extranjera hasta un 100% en líneas aéreas nacionales. En el año recién pasado, año 2023, promulgar la Ley de Incentivo a las líneas aéreas que desean operar rutas estratégicas en la República Dominicana, la Ley 57. En materia de conectividad, a nivel de América Latina, estamos ahora mismo en el tercer puesto, detrás de México y Brasil. Pero la pregunta que uno debe hacerse es, todos hablamos de conectividad, hacemos innumerables reuniones, estamos dispuestos a hacer conectividad interregional, pero cuando vamos a los hechos y a la pregunta, a la ejecución de este acuerdo, entonces aparece un poquito el proteccionismo. La integración europea en base en lo relativo a las líneas aéreas fue un poquito difícil el proceso, pero al final prevaleció los acuerdos de la Unión Europea sobre los intereses privados de las líneas aéreas y al final ha dado resultados, aunque hubo un proceso de fusión porque todos sabemos aquí, conocemos que en un proceso de liberalización las líneas aéreas más organizadas y más funcionales podrían quedarse con el mercado. Al final, para la integración y la conectividad intrarregional, somos muy parecidos en la parte cultural y la idiosincrasia del latinoamericano. En la parte de negocio nos diferenciamos bastante. Entonces, la pregunta es, tenemos 7 aeropuertos internacionales en República Dominicana en operación. Tenemos uno de los principal aeropuerto de América Latina, que es el aeropuerto de Punta Cana, que recibe en estos momentos más de 8 millones de pasajeros en entrada y salida. Y tenemos un mercado ahora mismo de América del Sur de desarrollo que está al momento superando la expectativa con respecto a la cantidad de pasajeros recibidos de Europa. Pero la pregunta al final de todo, y luego de todas estas reuniones que hemos tenido desde el año 2006 a la fecha, que más recuerde, al final del día es, ¿cómo podremos ponernos de acuerdo intrarregionalmente, poner las reglas claras a las líneas aéreas, poner las reglas claras a los aeropuertos, para así tener una integración regional completa y que los factores que se den en el proceso van a ser difíciles, pero al final se van a superar. Pero lo importante es iniciar esa integración con los mínimos requeridos. Por ejemplo, República Dominicana, con estos estados de Latinoamérica que tenemos acuerdos con 18 estados hasta quinta libertad, y tenemos acuerdos de sexta libertad que, si mal no recuerdo, con 10 estados, pero bilaterales. Pero al final, cuando queremos ponernos de acuerdo y hemos impulsado el multilateral de cielos abiertos, como habló la representante de Guatemala, desde el año 2010. Ese acuerdo cumple hoy, en el año que viene, cumple 15 años, y solamente de América Latina lo han firmado 6 estados, incluyendo República Dominicana, Paraguay y Chile, que fueron los originales en firmar ese documento. Pero la pregunta es, ¿cómo vamos a ejecutar, por lo menos en un mínimo, el inicio de esta integración de conectividad a nivel regional? Y después, el dolor, como se dice, o la cura, se va poniendo en el camino y las reglas se van ajustando según se den las relaciones comerciales entre la región. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Dominican Republic. Chile, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, señora presidenta. Saludo cordialmente a las representantes permanentes y alternos de los Estados miembros, como las y los presentes. Sumo a mis saludos un reconocimiento a la Secretaría y equipos que nos acompañan y hacen posible esta sesión, donde discutimos temas cruciales para la integración y el desarrollo de nuestras naciones en la región. Agradecemos las excelentes presentaciones y aportes de la y los panelistas, destacando las intervenciones, por cierto, del Secretario General y del Honorable Ministro de Relaciones Exteriores, Comercio Internacional, Aviación Civil y Asuntos de la Diáspora de Santa Lucía, que nos permiten profundizar y vislumbrar las complejidades de este y otros temas, como de sus potencialidades. Sin duda, la conectividad aérea es un aspecto fundamental para avanzar hacia una mayor cooperación y unidad de nuestras Américas. En un mundo cada vez más interconectado, la capacidad de mover personas y bienes con eficiencia y seguridad es clave para superar las barreras al comercio y fomentar la integración regional. Pero también, post-pandemia del COVID-19, la necesidad de repensar nuestras cadenas de suministro y hacerlas cada vez más resilientes. La conectividad aérea no solo facilita el transporte de pasajeros, sino que también es un catalizador para el intercambio comercial, cultural y turístico. Cuando nuestras naciones están mejor conectadas, se generan oportunidades que trascienden fronteras. Se fortalecen las economías locales y se promueve el desarrollo sostenible y equitativo. Es imperativo que trabajemos, por cierto, juntos en mejorar la infraestructura aeroportuaria, eliminar restricciones que limitan la competencia y promover políticas que faciliten el acceso de estas rutas aéreas. La colaboración entre nuestros países en este ámbito permitirá que nuestros ciudadanos y empresas puedan acceder a nuevos mercados, creando así un círculo virtuoso de crecimiento y bienestar. Todo esto ha sido, por cierto, mencionado por mis queridos colegas de las delegaciones presentes. Además, una mayor conectividad aérea es esencial para enfrentar los desafíos que nos presenta la realidad actual. En tiempos de crisis, como lo hemos vivido recientemente, la capacidad de mover ayuda humanitaria evacuaciones y apoyo logístico se vuelven aún más críticas. Invertir en conectividad es, por tanto, invertir en resiliencia para nuestras naciones. Quisiéramos destacar una iniciativa reciente que nos invita a repensar el cómo lo logramos, en donde quizá empoderar gobiernos locales o iniciativas regionales dentro de nuestros estados sea un camino a explorar. El 10 de julio recién pasado, el gobernador de Tarapacá, una región de Chile, el gobernador de Mato Grosso do Sul de Brasil y el secretario estatal de Medio Ambiente, Desarrollo, Ciencia, Tecnología e Innovación de Brasil encabezaron un seminario titulado Punto de Encuentro Tarapacá, Integración Global y Desarrollo en Brasil. Este evento, organizado por la División de Fomento y Industrias del Gobierno de Tarapacá, en conjunto con la Corporación de Desarrollo de dicha región, la SA de la Zona Fronteriza y Zona Franca de Chile, el Puerto de Iquique, ProChile y el Servicio Nacional de Turismo de Tarapacá, tenía como objetivo primordial mostrar las ventajas competitivas y comparativas de la región, llámese del norte de Chile, Tarapacá, desde el punto de vista comercial, turístico y logístico. A la fecha, dicha oficina de Corporación Tarapacá en Brasil ha cumplido un año y junto a 5 convenios firmados y un nutrido ecosistema donde autoridades y empresarios conocen las potencialidades para multiplicar los beneficios aparejados al corredor bioceánico de Capricornio, aún así, ambas autoridades han seguido prosperando. Y uno de los objetivos que tienen trazados a la fecha, que esperan materializar prontamente, es el desafío conjunto de materializar la conectividad aérea, por lo que se iniciaron gestiones para concretar un vuelo periódico directo entre Iquique y Campo Grande. Así, junto con otras iniciativas, Chile se compromete a ser un aliado de este esfuerzo. Estamos dispuestos a compartir nuestras experiencias y mejores prácticas en el ámbito de la conectividad aérea y a colaborar con todos ustedes para diseñar un marco que fomente la cooperación y el desarrollo regional. Nos sumamos al llamado de la presidencia del CIDI y a todos los Estados miembros de la OEA a que prioricemos la conectividad regional, incluida la aérea, como un eje central de nuestras políticas de integración. Juntos, por cierto, podemos derribar las barreras que nos separan y construir un futuro de la cooperación y el desarrollo para que sean asequibles a todas y todos. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Chile. If there are no further comments or interventions, I propose that CIDI expresses its gratitude to our invited experts for their contributions. Additionally, I suggest instructing CIDI to document and follow up on the cooperation and partnership opportunities identified during this dialogue and the interventions made by our delegations. CIDI should also assist member states interested in posting these offers on CorpoRanet. I look forward to receiving the Secretariat's outcome document titled Meeting Summary and Cooperation Opportunities Identified. I trust this document will aid in better engagement with member states and institutional partners and help identify concrete, actionable next steps. If there are no objections, it is so decided. Thank you all for your substantial contributions and comments, which the Secretariat has duly noted. We will now proceed with the next item on our agenda, which is sectorial ministerial process cycle. This item includes several key sectoral meetings that will take place later this year. The documents associated with each sector must now be considered for approval by the Council. We begin with culture. The first document for consideration in the draft agenda for the 7th regular meeting of the Inter-American Committee on Culture, SIC, scheduled for October 15, 2024. The document is classified as CIDI/SIC/Doc 1/24. I now open the floor to delegations who may wish to refer to this document. If there are no objections or interventions, the Council will take note of the draft agenda for the 7th regular meeting of the Inter-American Committee on Culture, SIC, and approve document CIDI/SIC/Doc 1/24. Approved. We now turn to the 22nd Inter-American Conference of Ministers of Labor, scheduled for October 23rd to 24th, 2024. To comply with Article 14 of the Rules of Procedure for sectoral ministerial meetings of CIDI, we will now proceed with establishing the order of precedence for delegations of member states and permanent observers during the 22nd Inter-American Conference of Ministers of Labor. I would like to remind delegations that, as outlined in Article 2 of these same rules of procedure, the principal, and I quote, the principal representative of the delegations that are next in the order of precedence shall serve ex officio as vice chairs of the ministerial and/or high-level meeting and shall replace the chair in the event of the latter's absence or impediment. End of quote. According to Article 14, and I quote, the order of precedence of the delegations for each meeting shall be established in alphabetical order in Spanish by the corresponding regular or special meeting of CIDI, once the first place has been drawn by lot. The order of precedence of the permanent observers shall be established in the same manner. End of quote. We will now proceed with the draw to determine the first place in the order of precedence for member states. Haiti. The first place amongst member states is Haiti. The remaining delegations will follow in alphabetical order in Spanish. We will now conduct the draw for the permanent observers. The first place amongst permanent observers is Pakistan. The remaining permanent observers will follow in alphabetical order. I now open the floor to any delegations wishing to refer to this process. Colombia, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, señora Presidente, y buenos días para todos. La delegación de Colombia quiere extender nuevamente una cordial invitación a la 22ª Conferencia Interamericana de Ministros de Trabajo que se llevará a cabo en la ciudad de Bogotá los días 23 y 24 de octubre del presente año. Este foro, que representa el principal espacio de discusión política y toma de decisiones en asuntos laborales de nuestro hemisferio, nos da la oportunidad de abordar los desafíos y oportunidades que enfrenta la región en materia de empleo y desarrollo laboral. En un momento en que nuestras naciones enfrentan una profunda transformación del mundo del trabajo, esta conferencia representa una oportunidad invaluable para avanzar en la construcción de una agenda común que promueva el empleo decente, la inclusión social y laboral y el respeto de los derechos fundamentales en el trabajo, que nos permitan entonces avanzar hacia la consideración de sociedades más justas, inclusivas y equitativas. En ese sentido, alentamos a los estados a enviar sus acreditaciones y formularios de viaje lo antes posible para facilitar todos los procedimientos administrativos necesarios. Su presencia es fundamental para enriquecer los debates y contribuir a la construcción de soluciones que respondan a las necesidades y retos de nuestras naciones. Asimismo, Colombia aprovecha esta oportunidad para expresar la gratitud a los ministerios que ya han enviado sus cartas formales de postulación para los cargos de liderazgo de la conferencia. Agradecemos por su compromiso con el proceso a las Bahamas, que se postula para la presidencia del Grupo de Trabajo 1, Barbados para la vicepresidencia del Grupo de Trabajo 1, Paraguay para la presidencia del Grupo de Trabajo 2 y Panamá para la vicepresidencia del Grupo de Trabajo 2 y la presidencia de la Conferencia Interamericana de Ministros de Trabajo. Invitamos a aquellos países que aún estén considerando postularse a hacerlo a la mayor brevedad posible. Señora Presidente, permítame concluir recordando el lema de esta conferencia: el futuro del trabajo en las Américas, cimentando la paz, la justicia social y la acción climática, que nos invita a reflexionar sobre el papel que debemos desempeñar para afrontar los desafíos del mundo laboral en un contexto marcado por el cambio climático, las tecnologías emergentes y la necesidad de garantizar un trabajo digno para todos. Nos recuerda la importancia de actuar con determinación para garantizar que la región avance hacia un futuro laboral más sostenible, justo y equitativo. Y en este sentido, Colombia reitera su más cálido mensaje de bienvenida a todos los participantes. Estamos seguros de que esta conferencia será un espacio de diálogo donde juntos podremos identificar soluciones innovadoras y sostenibles que respondan a las necesidades de nuestro hemisferio. Bienvenidos a Colombia, el país de la belleza. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Colombia, and thank you for undertaking to host this important meeting. If there are no objections, the Council will take note of the results of the drawing by lot for the establishment of the order of precedence for the 22nd Inter-American Conference of Ministers of Labor as follows: delegations excuse me, of member states, Haiti, and permanent observers, Pakistan. Approve. We now move on to the next sectoral process. Science and technology. The next item on our agenda addresses the 7th meeting of Ministers of High Authorities of Science and Technology, REMSIT, scheduled for November 11th to 12th, 2024. The following documents are presented for consideration and approval by the Council. 1, preliminary draft annotated agenda for the 7th REMSIT, classified as CD/REMSIT- Roman numerals VII/Doc 6/24. 2, draft agenda for the 7th meeting of Ministers of High Authorities of Science and Technology, classified as CD/REMSIT- Roman numerals VII/CD/Doc 3/24 Rev 1. 3, preliminary draft schedule for the 7th REMSIT, classified as CD/REMSIT- Roman numeral VII/Doc 7/24. 4, draft declaration towards the safe, secure, and trustworthy development and deployment of artificial intelligence in the Americas, the importance of governance, regulatory, and institutional frameworks, classified as CD/REMSIT- Roman numerals VII/Doc 3/24. And 5, draft plan of action towards the safe, secure, and trustworthy development and deployment of artificial intelligence in the Americas, classified as CIDI/REMSIT- Roman VII/RP/Doc 4/24 Rev 1. I now open the floor to delegations who may wish to refer to any of these documents. Jamaica, you have the floor.
Good morning, Chair. Ms. Kay Osborne, Executive Secretary. Madam Chair, Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Chair, as delegates are aware, the 7th meeting of Ministers and High Authorities of Science and Technology will be held this year and will address critical issues related to development and deployment of artificial intelligence in the Americas. As our region enters a technological revolution driven by AI and automation, the ministerial meeting will provide a unique opportunity for OS member states to come together and share insights on the continued impact of AI in our countries, address citizens' concern, and set a forward-looking agenda for cooperation and collective actions to provide safeguards, regulatory and institutional frameworks for this technology. In order to provide member states and the technical secretariat with ample time for the preparation of the ministerial meeting, the delegation of Jamaica is proposing to have the ministerial meeting postponed to December 12 and 13, 2024 at the OAS headquarters in Washington, D.C. Regarding the meeting documents, as you know, in preparation for this ministerial event, the Technical Secretariat of CIDI, Ministerial Process for Science and Technology, prepared a white paper which was distributed to all delegations on August 13, 2024, summarizing the key opportunities and challenges brought about by AI in the Americas. On Thursday, September 12, 2024, the Steering Committee of the CIDI, Ministerial Process on Science and Technology, chaired by Ms. Carol Palmer, Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Science, Energy, Telecommunications and Transport of Jamaica, in representation of Minister Darrell Vaz, met to review this white paper and to receive comments and inputs from delegations in relation to theme and preliminary draft agenda for the upcoming ministerial. The principal aim of the steering committee meeting, based on the general revised guidelines for the sectoral and ministerial processes within the framework of CIDI, was to using the inputs from the white paper, agree on the theme as well as the preliminary draft agenda for the upcoming ministerial. In line with this, the steering committee agreed on the following theme: towards the safe, secure, and trustworthy development and deployment of artificial intelligence in the Americas, the importance of governance, regulatory, and institutional frameworks. The committee also agreed on the preliminary draft agenda for the 7th Ministerial Meeting of Science and Technology, which includes sub-themes on designing model governance, regulatory and institutional framework for AI, leading intersectoral dialogue on AI to evaluate its impact on work, security, democracy, and human rights, among others, engaging in dialogue and collaboration with the private sector, strengthening institutional capacities and developing AI skills, and accelerating regional collaboration for AI research and development. In closing, the delegation of Jamaica, on behalf of the Steering Committee of the CIDI Ministerial Process on Science and Technology, wishes to submit the theme and the preliminary draft agenda for the 7th meeting of Ministers and High Authorities of Science and Technology for the consideration of the CIDI and to recommend its approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Jamaica. Your contribution is noted. If there are no further requests for the floor, I will advise that the Council take note and approve the above documents for subsequent consideration and adoption by ministers and high authorities of science and technology at the 7th REMSIT. And the change of date. Approved. Next, we will consider the preliminary list of observers and special guests for the 7th REMSIT, classified as CD/Doc 433/24. In accordance with Articles 15 through 19 of the Rules of Procedure for the sectoral and specialized meetings of CIDI, the Secretary General, with CIDI's authorization, will send invitations to special guests to attend and speak at these meetings, including national and international governmental entities and individuals of recognized expertise. The Secretariat previously distributed the preliminary list of observers and special guests for the 7th REMSIT. Delegations are invited to present any special guest to the Secretariat by October 27, 2024, to comply with the requirement of at least 15 days notice before the meeting. I suppose we'll make some adjustment there. Yes. I now open the floor for any comments or interventions regarding this document. Considering we have no interventions, I propose that we approve the preliminary list of observers and special guests with the possibility for additional names to be submitted with a revised date, that is. If there are no objections, the list will be considered approved. Approved. In preparation for the discussions of the key documents already approved for the meeting in November and December, the Secretariat has distributed the documents for the preparatory meeting, which will take place on October 3rd to 4th, 2024. The documents are the draft agenda for the preparatory meeting for the 7th REMSIT, classified as CD REMSIT Roman numerals VII/RP/Doc 1/24, and draft schedule for the preparatory meeting for the 7th REMSIT, classified as CD/REMSIT Roman numerals VII/RP/Doc 2/24. I now open the floor to delegations who may wish to refer to these documents. If there are no objections, the Council will take note of the draft agenda and draft schedule for the preparatory meeting for the 7th REMSIT and the upcoming preparatory meeting scheduled for October 3rd to 4th, 2024. Noted. We now move on to tourism. Before delving into the discussion on documents for the meeting, I would like to offer the floor to Ecuador. Ecuador, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, señora presidenta, por darme la palabra. Un cordial saludo a usted, a la secretaria Osborne, a los representantes permanentes y alternos. En esta ocasión me voy a permitir leer la nota entregada el día de hoy. La misión permanente del Ecuador ante la Organización de los Estados Americanos saluda atentamente a la Secretaría Ejecutiva para el Desarrollo Integral y como alcance a la nota número 42064-2024, 19 de marzo de 2024, tiene a bien trasladar que el Ministerio de Turismo del Ecuador solicitó que se ponga en conocimiento del CIDI que a pesar de todos los esfuerzos desplegados para concretar la suscripción del acuerdo entre el Gobierno de la República del Ecuador y la Secretaría General de la Organización de los Estados Americanos relativo a la celebración del 26º Congreso Interamericano de Ministros y Altas Autoridades de Turismo, los recursos estatales para este propósito no podrán concretarse. El direccionamiento de los recursos materiales y humanos para atender la crisis energética y climatológica que atraviesa el Ecuador ha determinado que el Gobierno Nacional canalice todos los recursos y su contingente para sobrellevar esta situación para el bienestar de toda la ciudadanía. Y en tal virtud, el Ministerio de Turismo lamenta informar que no podrá llevar a cabo el 26º Congreso Interamericano de Ministros y Altas Autoridades de Turismo que se tenía previsto realizar en la ciudad de Guayaquil el día 21 y 22 de noviembre de 2024. La misión permanente del Ecuador ante la Organización de los Estados Americanos hace propicia la ocasión para reiterar a la Secretaría Ejecutiva para el desarrollo integral la seguridad es de la más distinguida consideración. Muchas gracias, señora presidenta.
Thank you, Ecuador. And we consider the draft declaration of Guayaquil, which is harnessing the power of heritage tourism for development in the Americas, for the 26th Inter-American Congress of Ministers and High-Level Authorities of Tourism to be held November 21st to 22nd, 2024. This document is classified as CD/tour-Roman numeral XXVI/RP/Doc 1/24. The floor is now open for comments from delegations. Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to clarify one point on Ecuador's last point, if a member state is not able to host the ministerial, then the default host or the default venue for the ministerial will be headquarters per CIDI's rules. I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
If there are no objections to the above, the Council takes note and approves the draft declaration of Guayaquil by member states at the 26th Inter-American Congress of Ministers and High-Level Authorities of Tourism. Approved. The Council will also consider the draft plan of action of Guayaquil, harnessing the power of heritage tourism for development in the Americas, classified as CD/2-Roman numeral XXVI/RP/Doc 2/24. I now give the floor to any delegations wishing to speak on this document. I see we have no requests for the floor. Hence, the Council will take note and approve the draft plan of action for Guayaquil for consideration and adoption by member states at the 26th Inter-American Congress of Ministers and High-Level Authorities of Tourism. Approved. Next, We will consider the preliminary list of observers and special guests for the 26th Inter-American Congress of Ministers and High-Level Authorities of Tourism, classified as CIDI/Doc 435/24. Following the already cited procedures, delegations are invited to present any special guest to the Secretariat by November 6, 2024, to comply with the requirement of at least 15 days' notice before the meeting. I now open the floor for any comments or interventions regarding this document. Hence, I thank you for your consideration. I propose that we approve the preliminary list of observers and special guests, with the possibility for additional names to be submitted until November 6, 2024. If there are no objections, the list will be considered approved. With no objections, the list is hereby approved. Finally, I present the documents for the preparatory meeting, which will take place on October 8th and 9th, 2024. The documents are: 1, draft agenda for the preparatory meeting, harnessing the power of heritage tourism for development in the Americas, classified as CD/2-Roman numerals XXVI/RP/Doc 4/24. And 2, draft schedule for the preparatory meeting, classified as CD/2-Roman numerals XXVI/RP/Doc 3/24. I now open the floor to delegations who may wish to refer to these documents. There are no requests for the floor. The Council will take note of the presented documents and of the upcoming preparatory meetings scheduled for October 8th and 9th, 2024. Noted. We move to our final item on this agenda today. Other matters. We have concluded all agenda items for today's meetings. Before we close, I would like to remind you of the ongoing virtual fora for both the 7th meeting of Ministers and High Authorities of Science and Technology and the 26th Inter-American Congress of Ministers and High-Level Authorities of Tourism. These forums, which are open until the end of today, October 1st, 2024, allow OAS member states to share contributions and comments on the draft declarations and plans of action for each meeting. Once again, a reminder that the preparatory meeting for the 7th REMSIT will take place on October 3rd and 4th, 2024 at OAS headquarters in hybrid format. And the preparatory meeting for the 27th Inter-American Congress of Ministers and High-Level Authorities of Tourism will be held virtually on October 8th and 9th, 2024. Your participation and contributions to the proposed documents are critical, and we encourage the active involvement of your ministries and high-level authorities in these processes. If there are any additional matters, I now invite delegations to bring them to the attention of the Council. With no further matters, I thank you all for your participation. This meeting is adjourned. Adjourned.